All right, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, and then let me get it where I can actually see the chat. Give me just one more second. All right, so good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here for Alabama's 21st Century Community Learning Center Cohort 27 peer review training. I just wanted to start off by telling everyone thank you so much for being here. Sorry that I'm sharing my screen this way. I'm not going to put it into presentation mode because when I do that, it makes my two screens go crazy and I can't see the chat when that happens. And so I don't love doing it this way because you can see all my little errors and it's, it shows red when something may not line up right or whatever, but this is just the easiest way where I can monitor the chat and kind of see you guys and do the presentation at the same time. If you're just now joining us, if you'll please go into the chat and make sure that you put in your name so that put your full name so that we can make sure we give credit to everyone for being here today and being here for the peer review training. And I guess I need to introduce myself. So my name is Amanda Ryland. I am the 21st Century Coordinator here in Alabama. And I've been in this position almost 2 years now. It'll be 2 years this summer. So I have a great team who is also fairly new to 21st Century. We have Dr. Melissa McKinney, who is here with us today. And she's the one who's been reaching out and helping us find all of our great peer reviewers. We have Dr. Kelly Smith, who I don't think is joining us this morning. She's working on some other things. And then Carla White. But this is the contact information for any of us. If you have questions while you're reviewing any of these applications, please don't hesitate to reach out to one of us. We are happy to help you in any way possible. All right. Sorry, I can't move that to another screen. Anyway, okay. So what we're going to be doing today, we're going to be becoming familiar with the Cohort 27 RFA for 21st Century and talk about its relevance to the scoring rubric. I'm going to kind of walk you through our grants management system, EGAP, which is what we use for applicants to submit their applications, and it's what you'll use to actually score the applications. And then we're going to discuss compensation and related procedures at the end. So hopefully, I know a lot of you helped us out last year, so we're excited that you're joining us again this year. But I'm going to kind of go over this as though you're brand new to 21st Century and brand new to being a peer reviewer. So please excuse me if I tell you information you already know. But we just want to make sure that everybody understands what to do. So 21st Century, let's talk about what it is. It is a federally funded program that supports the creation of community learning centers that provide academic enrichment opportunities during non-school hours for children. And they're supposed to be focused on high poverty, low performing schools. Our goal is to help students meet those state and local academic standards in their core academic subjects, such as reading and math. But of course, we also want the after-school program to be fun and a place where students want to spend their afternoons. And so we also encourage sites to offer a broad array of enrichment activities that will help complement their academic courses and activities, but also helps develop this well-rounded child who has more experiences than they typically would get during the school day. We can also serve the families of participating children as well. So we can, with 21st Century Funds, offer activities for adults, for the adult family members of the students who are in our programs to help them as well. if you ever want, and I will make sure that Melissa sends out this PowerPoint to everyone so that you'll have access to these links. But if you want to know more about the 21st Century program, then there's links here that takes you to the federal website. All right, so again, just reiterating our purpose, we want to provide academic enrichment activities, which is important to us. And a couple of years or a few years ago, we didn't necessarily focus on academics as much as we should have been, or maybe just since we came on board, our team has come on board, the goals of 21st century have changed a bit, but we do want to make sure that all of our programs do have academic enrichment activities. It's not just not just fun activities. It's not just um, it's not just a place for, I hate to say it this way, but it's not a babysitting service. It's not a daycare. It is a place where students are going to have their academics enriched. So we want to make sure that all of our programs do have that piece of the puzzle. But we do want them to enjoy the program. We want it to be fun for them. And so we want them to have additional services, programs, and activities that enrich the students beyond just academic enrichment. So they can use funds to do things like we ask that they do things like service learning projects. We want them to learn about nutrition, health education, drug and violence prevention programs if needed. They can have counseling programs if needed, arts, music, physical fitness, wellness, technology, all of the things that students can benefit from. That's what we would love to see in our 21st century programs. And then again, our families can also be served by these programs, and giving them not just a way to be more active in their children's education, but also it can benefit them as well and their own personal growth and learning. For example, you could have a program might have something like a GED class for adult members or adult family members of the students who participate. So those are things that we love to see inside in the applications as well. So let's talk a little bit about the applicant, the types of applicants you'll see as you're scoring the applications. So this grant is actually available to pretty much any public or private organization. Any organization, even one that is a for-profit private organization, can apply for 21st century funds. Examples of agencies that you might see applying, and this is what you'll see mostly, would be our schools or our school districts or our LEAs. So for example, you might see an application from Arab City School System, and they're going to have a program at Arab Elementary School. We'll also see community-based organizations. That's probably the second most that you'll see. Still not a huge number of those, but we usually do have around 10 to 15 community-based applications each year, or community-based organization applications. And so an example of those might be Boys and Girls Club of Alabama or South Alabama. There's several different ones. And then sometimes we'll have faith-based organizations apply. I think we do have a couple of those this time as well. So it may be something like Pilgrim Rest Missionary Baptist Church might be applying for a 21st century grant. Any of those are eligible to apply. But they do have to demonstrate how they're going to propose to target students that primarily attend schools that are eligible for Title I, okay, to have a school-wide program under Title I. And the reason why it's worded as eligible is just because a school is eligible for Title I funding doesn't necessarily mean that they actually are being served with Title I funds. It could be that their school system has decided to just focus on elementary schools and put all of their Title I funds towards elementary school. So they may have a middle school or high school that also is eligible to receive those funds, but they're not. That it just means that they are meeting that, they do have that 40% or more poverty level and it could be that they receive a waiver from the state agency, from the state to operate a school-wide program, or they could be a non-title public school that has 40% or more poverty. So basically what we're looking for is that 40% or more poverty level. Do want to point out to you that previously or currently funded 21st century subgrantees are eligible to apply for new grant funding, but they must demonstrate how the new award will supplement any existing programs or provide additional sites. So that's kind of new for our state. I don't know. I know we have some people here from other states, but in the past, if you had a current grant, I'm sorry, let me ignore that. If you have a current grant in the past, you weren't allowed to apply for an additional grant. And technically, you're really still not allowed to, as if you're serving the same kids. But if they do have a current grant right now, I'm not talking about the grant that's about to roll off, but let's say so right now we have two programs. I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling. We have two cohorts that are currently receiving funds from 21st Century. We have cohort 17, which is actually, this is the last year of their funding and they're going to roll off. And a lot of the applications that are coming in or that you guys are going to be reviewing are from those sites. And then we have cohort 26, who got their grant last year. And it is possible, if they got a cohort 26 grant, for them to apply for a grant for cohort 27, as long as they're serving additional students or they're taking their program further than they had it before. So let's say, for example, they had a 21st century program at a K-12 school, and in cohort 26, they were just serving the kids that were K-4, kindergarten through fourth grade, but now they want to bring in their middle school and high school students. Technically, they could apply for a grant just for that same school, but now serving the middle and high school students. So that is a possibility. Okay, I just saw. So there's a question that popped up that said, is there a list of eligible schools available to us, or do we rely solely on the application for the information? If we assign them to you guys, then they're eligible. We are here at the State Department. We are right now going through all the applications and making sure that they are all eligible. And we're only going to assign those out that are eligible for the grant. So you don't have to worry about having a list or anything to compare it to. But great question. All right. You will use our online grant management system called eGap to score these applications. The website is here. And a copy of the RFA can be found on our website under Cohort 27 Information tab. We'll make sure we get that sent out to you guys as well. And then we did develop a rubric, like a worksheet that we highly suggest that you use as you're scoring the applications, so that everybody is on basically the same page. And I'm going to put that, I'll put that link in. Well, I'm going to try to. Sorry. The heck. Well, I don't know what's going on. I will make sure I get you guys that. Let's see. I think I can just put it in here. I think I can put it in the chat. Yes. Okay. It's going to let me do that. All right, so the rubric document, I just put it in the chat. We'll make sure we send it out to you by email as well. But we would like to see everybody use this rubric as you're scoring. I'll show you, let me show you really quickly, and I may be getting ahead of myself. I think I actually am. But I'll show you that document in a little bit and show you why we would really like you to use it as you're scoring your applications. So this year's application is divided into two main sections. You've got supplemental information, so when you get into eGap, and we're going to kind of go look at eGap in a little while, but when you get into eGap, there's two main sections that the subgrantees have to put information into. The first section is the supplemental information, and that's where they review their assurances. So there's specific assurances that they have to agree to. Some of them are federal assurances and some of them are state assurances. but by submitting the application, they're agreeing to those assurances. You don't have to go, guys don't have to go look at those. Then there's the sub-grantee contact information that they put in for us. Again, that's something that we will check at the state level, so you don't necessarily have to go look at that. You're welcome to if you want to, but you don't have to. The main thing that you guys are going to need to be worried about is the second part of the application, and it says 21st Century Cohort 27. And you've got the budget, the application details, and related documents. Those are the main things that you guys are going to actually be reviewing as you do your peer review. Okay? All right. So let's look at the breakdown a little bit closer. So this year's is a little different than last year. So if you did help us out last year, then it's very similar, but also kind of different. So I'm going to try to point those differences out to you guys. One thing we did this year is increase the amount of points for each section. Last year's application, I think the total number of points you could get was like 175. It was a lot less. And we had a lot of applications that scored very similar to each other, and the only difference was just like by tenths of a point. And so we wanted to give you a broader range for you to give your scores this time. So we did increase the amount of the score for each section. And then also in this year's application, instead of you choosing like a range, you will actually be able to type in the actual score that you feel that application deserves. For most of the questions, there's a couple where it still has you pick a range, but most of the questions you'll actually type in a number. And the number you type in will be based off, hopefully you'll use the rubric we provide you guys and to determine the appropriate number to assign or to score the application for that section. And that's what you'll use to type in. I'm sorry, I have a hair somewhere on my face that's driving me crazy. There we go. I think I found it. All right. Okay, so the first component of the application details is just general information. There is a place where you'll pick whether that information is filled out or not and accurate or not, but they don't really get any points for this section. We do check it to make sure, again, that these are eligible applicants, but we just ask you to kind of glance at those, and I think this is one where you are given like a couple of options and a place to put comments, but it's not you don't have to assign points to this one. This is kind of one of those things that's mandatory. You have to fill it out, or you don't qualify for the application. So we don't necessarily assign points for you just filling in your name and basic information about your site in that part. Component 2 is where they go into details about their needs assessment. Component 3 is their project design. Then we have management, which includes staffing and things like that. And then we have adequacy of resources and sustainability. Then we're going to ask you to look at their actual budget for 50 points. And then there's a few required documents that we would like you to look at this year that I don't think we had you guys look at last year. Their weekly schedule, the multi-year program design and performance form, which you did look at last year, and the job descriptions. And then finally, you'll go through the competitive priorities and see, assign what priorities points that you feel like they are deserving of. And then that's it for the application. So let's walk through each part of this in more detail. All right, again, component 1. So this is just general information. It's mandatory for them to complete, but only thing that you will need to do is just put a comment or pick whether you feel like the information is complete or incomplete, and then put a comment. So it asks information like what schools are going to be served or what LEA will be served, the number of schools and sites they're going to serve, where the 21st Century Center is going to be located, the grade levels they're going to serve, the name of their program. It should include 21st Century in their name, proposed number of students, days of the week and times the program will operate, total program hours, cost center, and then what competitive priorities they're going to qualify for. So it's just general information about the grant. Again, this is not something you will necessarily give points for, but we do want you to look at it and let us know if you feel like any of the information is incomplete. All right, component 2 is going to be the needs statement. Now we're going to talk about the application or what your part of the application kind of after we walk through the RFA, but I do want to make you aware that for each of these sections, you'll give points, and then we ask you to create a comment. And we're going to go into more details about those comments after, but just be aware that writing a comment is necessary for each of the components because we want to make sure that that you guys leave comments that are going to be helpful to the site to know why they did get the grant or why they didn't get the grant or why they scored poorly in that section or why they scored well in a section. So when I talk about leaving comments, that's what I'm referring to. Okay, so component 2 is the needs statement. And in this section, it's divided into a couple of different sections. So in the first section, 2A, it's about the needs assessment process and findings. So we expect them to talk about the involvement of their collaborative partners in developing their needs assessment, and then the things that should be included in the things that they write about. So they're supposed to talk about when that needs process began, what kind of data information they collected, what various resources they used, how they gathered and analyzed those sources, how the program was developed into a defined set of agreed upon needs. And then they specifically talk about what they found in their needs assessment. So in 2A, they first need to talk about the needs of the community to be served, which could include, so be mindful of when it says it must include something and when it may include something. If it says must, then we expect each of these things to be addressed. If they aren't, then we would expect you to score accordingly. That means that something is incomplete. But if it says may, then these are just examples of things that they could include in their needs assessment. So when they're talking about the needs of the community, they could refer to the juvenile crime rate. They could talk about violence and drug-related offenses. They could talk about poverty rates, demographic, economic, and workforce changes. Okay. And then in the next part, they're supposed to talk about the needs of the proposed participating schools, again, which may include if the schools that are being served are in school improvement, if they're identified as CSI, TSI, or ATSI. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a little while. But if the schools that they are serving are in one of these school improvement schools, they should refer to that. They could talk about their attendance data, truancy rates, dropout rates, number of students suspended, short-term, long-term suspensions, discipline rates. Any of these things listed here are things that they could mention when discussing the needs of the schools. All right, so what you see here on the right side is that scoring rubric that we would like everyone to use when determining how this site or how this application should score in this section. So, and this is in the worksheet that we're going to give you guys that you're welcome to print and write on. But this is the scoring range we would like you to use. So if they have a clear timeline, they talk about multiple sources of data, partner involvement, transparent analysis, define needs tied to the proposal. If they specify when development began, what data were collected, they refer to some of those things that we talked about, like attendance, discipline, poverty, crime, workforce, how the sources were analyzed, and how the findings formed agreed upon needs driving their design of their program, then they would score in the range of 13 to 15. Okay. And then it goes and it tells you in here kind of how to score. So the lowest one, I'm not going to go read all of these to you. You guys are adults and can read this yourself, but notice if they will score 0 to 4 if they have a missing timeline, missing data, they don't talk about their partnerships, they don't talk about the analysis, the needs of the needs themselves are not connected to the design of the program. That's when you would score them in the 0 to 4 range. So again, when you're given a rubric like this, you will actually be able to type in the specific number. So if you feel like they did an amazing job, maybe could have done a little better, you might pick a 13. If you think that it was written as best as it could be written and there's no way they could have done better, you give them a 15. If they're in the middle, you give them one of the middle scores. But hopefully this will kind of help us to differentiate our scoring a little bit better so that we can more easily see which sites are more deserving of the grant and which ones are not. Okay. Then you've got a part 2 of component 2, which talks about the student and family needs. So these are the different things that they are supposed to talk about in their narrative. So they're going to talk about the needs of the students to be served, including any specific data pertaining to the needs, which this is just things that they could use. They could talk about reading and math proficiency. They could talk about the number of students that are below proficiency in math or reading or language arts. In the next part, they're supposed to talk about the needs of their families, of the students to be served. It could be that you discuss their education levels, their family literacy needs, parental involvement and skills. And then lastly, they're going to talk about their needs related to a summer program if they plan to have one. So they're supposed to, if they're going to offer a summer program, they should have needs assessment data backing up that they need a summer program in that community. Again, we provide for you a rubric to help you determine how best to score the narrative that they provide. I'm not going to read this to you again, but you would just use this rubric to kind of help you come up with the best score to apply to this particular component. All right, does anybody have any questions so far about how kind of this works? I know we haven't gotten very far, but I want to make sure that everybody's good to go. Okay, got a thumbs up. That's great. All right, I'm going to take a sip real quick. All right, let's move on. Then you've got to choose C. And in this part is where we expect them to talk about if they have an existing program. Okay, great question. We had a question that popped up that says, do we only score the information provided in the section, or do we score information that may be written in other sections that are relevant? We really want you to score what's written in that section. The only time when I could say that you need to be thinking about when things are relevant that may be written in multiple places is when you're thinking about priority points and whether they deserve those priority points or not. They may indicate that in multiple places throughout the application. And I told the applicants that they should indicate when they're providing evidence within their application that would apply towards a priority point, like put it in parentheses, priority point 1, highlight it maybe. But some may have done that. I noticed a few did when I was kind of scanning applications, and some may not. So those are things that you may need to keep an eye on, but we really want them to write if we really want them to answer the question in the narrative where they're supposed to answer the question. So try to kind of when it comes to the regular components and when you're scoring those, try to just score what's actually written in that narrative, in that component. Okay. So this is a weird question. This is where we ask them to talk about their existing program. Some of them may not have an existing program, and so this may not be applicable to them. And so in this one, for this portion, they could actually get 0 points or they could lose up to 5 points, okay? So what we want them to do is if they have an existing after-school program or an existing summer program, whether it's 21st century provided or not, we want them to talk about that program. We want them to tell us the number of students they're serving, the number of paid staff, the source of the funding, how many days, hours per week the program is operating. We want them to tell us about that. The reason why we need to know this information is so that we can help the sites, help prevent the sites from supplanting. 21st century funds are intended to supplement the current programs, but not supplant them. So what that means is they are supposed to use the 21st century funds to expand the programs that they currently have, but not take the place of current funding for those programs. So if they currently are providing an after school program, let's say they provide after school tutoring right now to a certain number of students on certain days of the week, they should, if they get the 21st century program, they shouldn't stop paying for that after school tutoring or providing that after school tutoring. They shouldn't stop paying for it with the funds that they're currently using, but they could use their 21st century funds to build that program and make it larger. Okay. And so we try to help keep them from supplanting. And so that's why we need to know this information. We need to know what they're currently providing their students and what funding sources they're using to provide those activities, because they're supposed to keep doing that if that funding source is still available to them. Now, if the funding source is like a temporary thing that goes away, like we had happen with COVID funds when they went away, it was fine for them to pick that program up the next year with 21st century funds. But if those funds still exist, they're still supposed to be spending those funds the way they have in the past. But 21st century is supposed to supplement that, may help them build the program, serve more kids, extend the hours, no longer have to charge a fee for students to participate, things like that. They can use 21st century funds for that sort of thing. So they're also supposed to talk about how their 21st century program will operate in conjunction with the program that was already existing. And then how having these 21st century funds is going to, the impact it's going to have on the existing programs in terms of, is it going to expand the days and hours of operation? Is it going to enable them to serve more students? Will it enable them to get rid of those participation fees? Whatever the case may be. So our scoring, this is one where you will pick, you'll actually pick from a drop-down list of potential scores. And this is one of the few that's like that. But your choices are either 0 points for not being applicable. That means the applicant does not currently operate an after-school or summer program. So you would choose the first 0 points. Or it could be 0 points for being adequate. Their answer is adequate. They currently operate an after school or summer program and fully describe current program and integration plan. So if they do what they're supposed to do, if they describe their current program the way they're supposed to, they actually just get 0 points for that. Okay. I know that seems weird, but if we gave them points for that, that would actually give them a benefit over schools that don't currently have an after-school program. It would enable them to get more points than those who don't have that, and we didn't want to do that. We didn't want to give them kind of a leg up over sites that don't currently have an after-school program. So that's why the scoring would be 0 there. Now, if they have a current after school or summer program. Give me just one. Yeah, I'll address that in just 1 second. So if they do have a current after school program, but they only give you very limited information, they only provide a partial description of their current program with little to no integration plan, then you're going to actually have -3 points. You'll choose, well, they'll lose points. And if it's completely inadequate, if their answer if they say they currently operate an after school or summer program, but then they provide a completely inadequate answer, they don't describe the program at all, they don't tell you how they're going to integrate the new 21st century funds with the current program, then they'll lose 5 points. Okay, so with this one, you will choose one of those 4 options. Okay, a question popped up. Can you please explain the ineligible to apply statement? I'm not sure which statement you're referring to. Can you unmute yourself and tell me which statement you're referring to? In parentheses. Okay. Oh, okay, okay. Oh, I see. Okay. Oh, yes. Okay, I see what you're talking about. I'm so sorry. Okay, so that is just referring to if they currently have a 21st century program. If a 21st century program is currently funding their after school program, then they're ineligible to apply, but it's really that it really needs to be more specific. Technically that's not actually accurate. They are eligible to apply as long as they're serving a different group of students. But typically, if it's referring to the same students, which is, if it's referring to students they currently have that they're serving, then they would not be eligible to apply for the 21st century grant. So that is a confusing statement. So pretty much, I think I actually have that in there from last year's application, but typically if they're currently running an after school program that is funded by 21st Century, then they wouldn't be eligible to apply for a grant if it's talking about serving the same kids. And so that's why it says that ineligible to apply. But there are some situations where they actually could apply for the 21st Century program if they were serving a different group of students. Like if in the example that I mentioned earlier, where they're serving like way older kids or something, like a totally different group of kids. So I'm sorry that is a bit confusing. So I'm glad you asked that question. Okay. All right, that was it for component 2. So component 2 is divided into 3 sections, and you have rubrics for 2 of them, and then you have that last little part, which is kind of weird, where you'll either assign 0 points or you'll take points away if they do have a program, but they don't describe it accurately. All right, component 3 is referring to their project design. This is where we expect them to tell us their performance goals and objectives, describe to us the services and activities they plan to provide, and the evaluation strategies that they plan to use to know whether their program is working or not. They are supposed to address how those goals, objectives, and services are going to, how they're going to help or serve the needs of their students or their families. And we highly encourage them to use Form 9, the multi-year program design and performance form, to help them develop a matrix that reflects their project design, including their performance goals, their related objectives, their strategies and activities. So you'll see in the application several times where it's going to refer to Form 9, multi-year program design. The purpose of that form is for them to show how their objectives are related to their program goals, and then how the activities they choose to provide their kids are actually related to those objectives, how the evaluation strategies or the data they're going to collect is related to those activities, and then finally how their budget is related to those activities as well. Like what are they spending their money on? Is the things that they're spending the money on actually based on the activities they say they're going to provide to the students, which are based on their objectives, which are based on their program goals. So it's a way for them to map out how one is tied to the next, and how one, and the next and the next and the next, because they really don't do that in the application itself. In the application itself, it's all kind of broken up, and it's all very, they talk about one thing at a time. And so it would be very easy for them to, it would be very easy for them to say they're going to do all these big and great things, but then when you actually look at how those things are tied to each other, there's not a good link there. And so they're supposed to use that Form 9 to link one to the next, so that you can see that this is a well thought out program. So I would recommend that you print and print what they have in their Form 9. And as you're checking these components, make sure they are, related to one another as they're supposed to be. Okay, so the component 3 section is divided into 4 parts. Oh, first let me show you what that Form 9 looks like. Okay, so this is what it looks like. It was in last year's application. We did not change that. But in it, you'll have your performance goal that's written here in this darker gray box. And then they have the objective, which will be here. Now, we have given them their performance goals this year. They have 6 performance goals. We've given them all 6. The reason why we do this is because we needed to have kind of standards that we used as a state to make sure that our programs were working the way they're supposed to work. And so we came up with 6 performance goals that we want everyone to address in their programs. Now, they can create additional performance goals if they would like to. They can add to those 6, but they don't have to by any means, but we do ask them to use our 6. And then in some cases, we actually give them objectives that we want them to use. Specifically in performance goals 1 through 3, we give them specific objectives that that we need to use as a state to look at our programs across the board. Okay. So they can add additional objectives if they would like to, based on their needs assessment, but we do give them a few or a couple for each performance goal that we would like, for each of the first 3 performance goals that we would like them to all have as standard objectives for all sites across the state. So this first one is one of those performance goals. They should not change them if they are in this form. The first, they should be the same as they are. I'm sorry. The ones that we provide to them should not be changed. Last year, they had the option to change some of their objectives if they didn't make sense, but we've adjusted those objectives now to make it where they should apply to all sites across the board. So for example, last year we had where they were looking at like report card grades from the beginning of the year to the end of the year and looking for like an increase in their report card grade. But that didn't work across the board for everyone because not all schools used typical like A, B, C, D grading. And so they had to change theirs to make it kind of equivalent but similar. But this year, instead of using report card grades, we're using benchmark assessments, which is something that all schools at all grade levels should have. So these should not change and their target should not change, okay? Then they're supposed to tell us what strategies and activities that they're going to offer students to help meet these goals. They're supposed to talk about the data sources and evaluation methods they're going to use to determine whether those activities and strategies are working. And then they're supposed to mention specific budget categories that they'll use to actually implement those strategies and activities. So are they going to have to hire staff? Are they going to need materials and supplies? They should mention that over here in the budget portion. Okay. All right. So, and this form can be long, so it keeps going down. I'm just showing you the top page of it, but it could be quite long. But hopefully they'll use this tool to help develop their strategies and activities and their data sources and things like that. All right, so let's talk about component 3A. So it is referring, in component 3A, they're going to talk about their performance goals and objectives. And it's divided into parts 1 and 2. So it's even further divided down, all right? Keep in mind that their goals and objectives are clear statements of what the applicant will accomplish with their project. They must reflect the results of the needs assessment, mirror the purpose of the subgrant award, and address the needs identified in their needs assessment. They all have to address these 6 performance goals, which are written here. The first 2 are here, the rest are on the next slide. So we expect students who are regularly participating in the program to meet or exceed state and local academic achievement standards in ELA, reading, and math. Students regularly participating in the program will show improvement in school attendance and performance. Performance goal 3 is that students regularly participating in the program will show improvement in behavior during the school day and by having reduced disciplinary referrals. And then keep in mind, we've given them performance goals and objectives for 1 through 3, but then 4 through 6, we give them the performance goals, but we expect them to develop the objectives based on their needs, okay? So goal 4 is that students regularly participating in the program will demonstrate holistic health and wellness by exhibiting positive self-awareness, social awareness, relationship skills, decision-making skills, and self-management. Number 5 is students regularly participating in the program will demonstrate civic responsibility and strengthen their community through service learning projects. And then performance goal 6 is that families of students regularly participating in the program will be afforded opportunities for increased parent and family engagement. Okay. And actually, I think that 6th one, it just occurred to me, I think that 6th one actually changed. Give me just one moment. I don't want to tell you wrong. Yes. So let me go ahead and fix that right now. We actually changed the 6th one because we don't want them to base their goals and objectives off of just giving them more opportunities. So we changed this one. Give me just one second. Families regularly demonstrate. Okay, so we changed this to, yep. Okay, we changed this to that they will demonstrate increased engagement in their child's learning and school community. Okay, sorry about that. I stole these from another informational meeting and forgot to change that one. So yes, 6 should actually be that they will demonstrate, that the families will demonstrate increased engagement in their child's learning and school community. What we don't want to see them saying we're going to offer more opportunities for them. We're going to provide more parent engagement activities. That's not a true goal. The goal is that the parents will demonstrate that they're engaging with their children's learning more. Not that they're just going to come to more after school program engagement activities. Them coming is great, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are actually engaging in their child's learning. They're just showing up. And it's great that they're showing up, but that's not the main goal. The main goal is that they have the ability to engage in their child's learning. So that's why we changed that particular goal. All right. So for 3A, part 1, they may just very well copy and paste what is being given to them, okay? Just a fair warning on that one, because again, we gave them the performance goals and objectives for the first 3 performance goals. And so they have been encouraged to add additional objectives if they feel like they need to, but they don't have to. And so it could be very standard where they've just basically copied and pasted this information into section 3A1, part 1, okay, where they go over performance goals 1 through 3. Just wanted to give you fair warning of that, okay? But again, performance goal 1 is the same as what I read a few minutes ago. Their objectives should be these 4 objectives, but they may have additional objectives as well. And they are all pretty much is just A and B are just repeated in C and D. A and B is about mathematics. C and D is about reading and English language arts. But basically what we're looking for is that they'll show a minimum of 10% growth from the beginning of the year to the end of the year in their district provided benchmark assessments in math, and then in reading for like that's A and C. And then B is that 45% of regular program participants will improve their mathematics performance on the state standardized assessment from the prior year to the current year. And then again for D is just referring, instead of mathematics, is referring to their reading performance level on that state standardized assessment. Okay. Then again, 2 and 3 provided for them. So we tell them we want them to use these particular objectives. 92% of regular program participants will show improvement in school attendance by reducing their number of days absent from the prior year to the current year. And then 92% of regular program participants will show improvement in classroom performance, including homework completion and classroom participation from the first marking period to the last marking period of each academic year, as reported by teachers. And then the third one is referring to those reduced discipline referrals. It says 80% of regular program participants will show improvement in their school behavior by reducing their number of discipline incidents from the prior year to the current year. So again, these are given to them. Okay. But you may ask yourself, then why even have it there? Like if you've given them these, then why is there even a narrative for them to write? Well, we did tell them that if their needs assessment showed that they needed to add additional objectives to those first 3 performance goals, then we encourage them to do that. So it may be that they have additional goals, objectives that they have come up with that pertain to those 3 performance goals. So you'll just see where it says that if the needs assessment revealed other requirements related to academic achievement, attendance, or behavior that are not reflected in the required objectives, then they can add additional objectives to the ones that have been given to them. Okay. They can add them in their narrative, but if they add them in their narrative, they should also have them listed on that Form 9 multi-year performance form. Okay. Again, here is your rubric to use to score that section. Okay. But just keep in mind, it may just be word for word what we provided for them. And if that's the case, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. Okay. So that's 3A. Part 1, then there is 3A Part 2. Notice that this one is worth more points, and that's because we're actually asking them to do more work, okay? We've provided for them the performance goals 4 through 6. We've told them what the goals are, but they are responsible for developing SMART objectives for those 3 performance goals, okay? So we would like to see that that they have developed SMART objectives or performance measures related to the 3 remaining required performance goals. And they are for holistic health and wellness, service learning, and parent and family engagement. Okay. Give me just one second. No. Could have sworn that I put in here more information about what SMART objectives will look like, but I'm not seeing it in here. I'm wondering if I'm using the wrong version of this, but hopefully not. Okay, but hopefully you know what those are, what those SMART objectives are. We want to see that they're measurable, they're time sensitive. Of course, I always draw a blank on what SMART stands for, but we do want to see that those are goals that they're not just saying we're going to give them more opportunities for something. They're not going to say we're going to provide more. Our objective is to provide more nutrition activities. That's not an objective. Providing them with more activities is not the objective. What we want to see is that those activities are making. Thank you, Melissa. She always helps me out. So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant. Thank you. And time bound. Thank you so much. I don't know why I always draw this. It's because I'm always doing a presentation and my brain just goes dead when I'm doing presentations where I have to remember things like that. But we do want them to be specific goals that are measurable. That's a big one. And achievable, that they're actually they're not aiming way too high or putting something that's unrealistic. They're relevant to the performance goals, and they are time bound. That it specifically says by the end of this time, students will be able to do this. Okay. Again, please, if they put in there that they're just going to provide more activities, that is not a SMART goal, and I hope that you will score them, accordingly if that's the type of thing that they've put in there. Also, they need to talk about if the application is funded, what will be used to evaluate the project's progress. So they need to make sure that they are setting realistic yet challenging targets, and make sure that those are achievable and verifiable. And they need to add those to that Form 9. Okay. So here is your rubrics that you'll use to score those. All right. I do want to point out for the holistic health and wellness portion. Hold on just one moment, please. I still feel like I'm missing something, but where I had talked about these. But anyway, we're just gonna keep trucking the way we're going. Okay, so for performance goal 4, holistic health and wellness, we told them that they could choose whatever is best for the needs. There's different pillars that fall under holistic health and wellness. You've got physical activity, you've got nutrition. It could include art. Let's see, trying to think of the different pillars that fall under those. Give me just one second and I can tell you better what they were told. I know where it's not. Just one second. Okay. So I just want to point this out so you'll know what to look for in that section. Well, that was there. Trying to think of what else could fall under there. So you've got health and nutrition. You've got your art projects, which could include things like performing plays. It could include typical, painting type art. It could include music type art. Any of that could potentially fall under holistic health and wellness. It could also include activities such as like counseling activities or social emotional learning type activities. Those could also fall under that holistic health and wellness. And that was one of the reasons why we wanted to give them the opportunity to develop their own objectives, because some programs really may need to incorporate more of those SEL activities, and some may not. Some may want to incorporate more physical PE type activities, or offering, those type, or have the ability to offer those types of activities, and some that may not be a need in their system. So we wanted that to be something that they could develop as needed. So they have been provided information about the different pillars they can choose from, and they can do one or multiple under that pillar. Okay. All right. 3B is where they're going to describe their strategies and activities. And so this is where they're going to tell us what activities and strategies they're actually going to incorporate in their 21st century programs. Okay. What I would like you guys to kind of keep an eye on is whether they truly plan to do those activities or not. and whether those activities seem feasible, whether they seem to have a good plan for those activities, not just that they say they're going to do something. So, for example, last year I noticed way after the fact that one of the programs that got the grant said that they were going to provide 90 minutes of math and reading instruction a day during their program. Well, their program only lasted 2 hours an afternoon, and they were going to do that every day. Well, but then they also talked about all these other activities they were going to do as well. Well, how are you going to fit 90 minutes worth of math and reading every single day and still do all these other activities that you said you were going to do? It's pretty much impossible. They put that in there because it sounded great. You know what I mean? They knew we were looking for an incorporation of math and reading. And so they put that in there because it sounded really great. But when you think about it and think about the other things they said they were going to do as well, in a 2 hour afternoon program, there's just no way for them to do all those things. And so think about, are they really going to do this, or are they just saying they're going to do this because it sounds like a great thing to do? So think about the feasibility of the activities that they say they're going to implement, and whether they can really do all the things that they say they're going to do. Don't just say, oh, that sounds really good, and give them a high score. Think about, is this something they really are going to be able to do? All the things that they say they're going to do, are they really going to be able to do that in the time period that they say they're going to do their afternoon programs, or are they just kind of saying things that they think will get them the grant? Because we do have an issue, just throwing this out there, we do have an issue where people say they're going to do these amazing and great things in their application, but then when it comes time to actually, when they get the grant and it comes time to actually set up their afternoons, their after school programs, they don't do any of the things that they said they were going to do. And so that's something that we're really, really trying to focus on, making sure doesn't happen, and that we, that we hold them accountable, that they actually do the things that they got funding to do. So please just kind of keep that in the back of your head as you're reviewing these, and think about whether what they say they're going to do is actually feasible or not. Okay, so again, they should tie those activities in their multi-year program design and performance form back to those objectives that they're related to. And if they have that they're going to provide an activity that has absolutely nothing to do with their objectives, that's a red flag. So let's say that under holistic health and wellness, they talk about they're going to do nutrition activities and they're going to do social emotional learning activities. But then when they get to their program plan, they're going to have, they're going to offer golf. They're going to have a golf pro come in and teach golf skills 3 days a week or whatever, 2 days a week, for several weeks. Well, physical fitness wasn't you didn't talk about that. That wasn't part of any of your objectives. So are the activities you're doing related? Now, it could be potentially, I guess, sort of related to nutrition, which when I think nutrition, I'm thinking about what you're physically taking into your body, what you're eating, not physical activity. But that's just like the first example that popped into my head. But just think about things like that. If they say they're going to provide activities, are those activities related to the goals that they said that they had for their students? Okay. And of course, are those goals, is the activities related to the objectives, which are related to the goals? I keep confusing those two when I speak, so excuse me for that. All right. So let's talk about what type of activities are allowable with 21st century programs, just in case you don't know, so that if you see activities mentioned, you'll maybe have an idea of whether these are things that are allowable or not. Of course, they're allowed to do an academic enrichment learning activities. We like to see those activities be fun, okay? So not just your typical, like I said a minute ago, my example, the 90 minutes of reading or math instruction. Goodness gracious, how boring. You know what I mean? What are you going to do instead? What fun things are you going to do to incorporate that reading and math? We want it to be something that supports the school day program, but in a fun way, okay? We want it to be outside the box. We don't want it to just be tutoring or homework help, okay? their literacy and math activity, they can incorporate homework help as a small portion of their after school program, but that shouldn't be what their whole program is based on, and that shouldn't be what their math and literacy is focused on, just homework help. It should be they're incorporating some sort of fun, hands-on activities to incorporate that math and reading learning in a different way than what they got during the school day. Okay, we don't want to see just homework help and tutoring as the only academic enrichment that's going on in the program. Okay. Um, they can do STEM activities. STEM has been a focus in Alabama for several years, and it's still, we didn't necessarily make that a focus of this application, though we still encourage them to do STEM activities. It's a great way to incorporate math and reading into their programs, but it's just, you'll probably see several that talk about STEM. They can do academic remediation, tutoring, and homework help, but again, we don't want that to be like the main focus of their academic enrichment in their programs. They're welcome to do it. It's a great thing to do, but it shouldn't be the only thing that they're doing that has anything to do with academic enrichment. We love to see literacy education programs, obviously, recreational programs that support a healthy and active lifestyle, including nutritional education, physical activity, structured physical activity, not just going outside and playing. We would love it if they're learning some sort of physical skill like golf, or they're learning baseball, or they're doing kickball or something that is actually some sort of structured physical activity. Promote social skills, teamwork, leadership, competition, and discipline. Anything like that is great. They can have activities that are specific to students who are limited in their English proficiency, so ELA activities. They can do any kind of well-rounded education activities that enable students to be eligible for credit recovery. So this would be like your older kids. They can incorporate credit recovery into their after-school or summer programs. They can provide some sort of program to students who've been truant, suspended, or expelled to allow them to improve their academic achievement. They can do drug and violence prevention, counseling, character education programs. They can spend funds on activities that target adult family members. We've already mentioned that. So they could do something like GED classes, classes on how to develop a resume, how to they could teach effective parenting strategies or family literacy strategies. And those can actually occur anytime during the day. They don't just have to occur after school or during the summer. They could occur during the school day, because that would just be targeting those family members, adult family members of those students that are no longer in school. They can have programs that promote parental involvement, designed to engage parents. So we do ask that they incorporate, that they do a open house type activity at the beginning of the year, but then they also incorporate at least one parental involvement activity each semester. And then if they're doing a summer program, one during the summer. They can do more than that, but that's just the minimum. And then we also make them come up with service learning activities that they do once per semester and once during the summer as well. So we ask them to have the students look at the needs of their own community and design tasks or design some sort of activity that will help meet the needs of the community. So they may actually have some ideas of the service learning projects already in their application just for the sake of the application, but just keep in mind that what they're encouraged to do is that once they've gotten the grant, they're encouraged to incorporate the students in the development of those service learning projects as well. So have them, they're supposed to ask the students, okay, what are the needs of our community? And think about specific needs. Maybe they have a park that's literally a block away from the school that is run down, and has equipment on it that needs to be painted or something like that, and maybe their community service activity could be go and paint the benches or to paint the equipment or something like that. That is great, but they're supposed to actually incorporate the students in the design of the activity, looking at what the needs of the community are, and then of course in the implementation of that activity, and then they're supposed to share it out with their community once they've completed it. They can do cultural programs, they can do art programs, they can do they can do enrichment activities that involve weapons. Okay, that's a new one that the feds came out with, I think, about a year ago. But they can have activities such as archery, hunting, or other shooting sports. They can also incorporate culinary arts, which would include knife skills for those older students. Now, the culinary arts could probably take place on campus as long as the instructors were very careful to make sure they locked any true knives up after the lessons. But things such as archery, hunting, or shooting sports, where they're actually going to be shooting a weapon, would have to take place outside of the school campus. And so they would need to kind of mention that in their plan if they plan on having activities like that. Okay. Sorry, let me let these people in. All right. They can have pre-approved field trips. They can do up to one field trip each semester during the academic year and up to one field trip per week during the summer. So they may mention and talk about those field trips. Field trips have to be connected to an academic or enrichment program, and they have to be educational. We have kind of cracked down on this one where it really does have to be an educational venue that they're going to. It can't be, it can't be a situation where they're going to a place that is typically meant to be for entertainment purposes, but have a learning program that's associated with it. So for example, Six Flags Over Georgia, I think they have a great physics activity that they provide to schools that come to Six Flags Over Georgia that talk about the physics of roller coasters and things like that. And it may be fabulous, it may be amazing, but the feds themselves have said that they don't want to see field trips going to places like that, even if it's tied to some sort of educational learning. They don't want to see that anymore. So we have kind of cut that out. Any field trips that they mention need to go to a place that's typically meant for education. So a museum, something of that nature, a place that's not typically meant for entertainment. So a lot of time, like for example, another example I can think of that people used to do a lot is we're going to take the kids to jump park or trampoline park for physical activity. No, that's not going to be allowable anymore. It's got to be some sort of educational experience. Yes, I understand that having physical activity is part of your after school program, but you can do that in other ways other than transporting kids to the local jump place and have them jump on trampolines. And no, you're not teaching them about gravity. I mean, we've seen it all. And so since the feds have really told us that they're cracking down on that, we have cracked down on it as well. Okay. A few more. They can do career and job training programs. We love to see that, especially with the older kids. We love to see them incorporating those career tech, and we've encouraged them to incorporate career tech into their summer and after school programming. So that's fantastic. Also, they can have elective high school courses as part of their afternoon or summer program, as long as they're not required by the State Department for graduation. So they can earn, it can be an elective that is optional to the students that can help them earn credit towards their graduation, but it can't be one of those electives or one of those courses that are required for all the students to take. Those have to be done during the regular school day. And then finally, they can spend 21st century funds on professional development opportunities for the staff that are tied to 21st century content. So if you see that they're going to a conference or something of that nature, it does need to be a conference that's related to after school programming or some sort of 21st century content. Things you should not see or things that are not allowed. They can't do activities that occur during normal school hours unless those activities are just targeting adult family members that are no longer in school. So they can't so for example, if they are going to do a field trip during the school year, they can't do part of that. That field trip cannot occur during normal school hours. It would have to be either a small field trip that can be doable in just the afternoon, or maybe they could do it on a Saturday, but it can't occur during the school day. Purchase of food. This is one that's also kind of a new thing that that typically used to not be allowed, but it is now under certain circumstances. So they can purchase food during the academic year, for example, for like an approved cooking class or cooking demonstration or health lesson. So if they're offering like a culinary arts class, they can purchase food for that culinary arts class. If they're doing a nutrition program, they can technically purchase food for that nutrition lesson. Now, they can't typically use 21st century funds to purchase like after school snacks, because they should be having a partnership with that school's child nutrition program to provide those after school snacks during the school year. However, we did come across an issue during the summer where we were having schools that were having a real struggle with providing food or snacks during their summer programs, because child nutrition programs are not required to run during the summer. And when they do run, they're only required to provide 2 meals or snacks a day. So we had some issues where the child nutrition program was running, but they only were able to provide like breakfast and lunch, but no afternoon snack. And so sites were having to come up with ways to provide those afternoon snacks, like reach out to their community and have snacks donated and things like that. So if that's the case, they can get pre-approval from the state to purchase snacks if for some reason they can't get them through their local child nutrition program. If their child nutrition program isn't running during the summer, then they can also, in that case, purchase maybe breakfast and lunch for those students. But again, they have to do it through the State Department. It has to be pre-approved. There's some different things that we ask them to do to make sure that what they're providing is like the most cost effective and most nutritional options to those students. But those are possibilities. So if you see that in their application, that is something that is allowable. But we want to see them first use their relationship with the child nutrition program to provide any kind of snacks and meals. And during the school year, that shouldn't be an issue. During the school year, they should be able to get afternoon snacks and sometimes meals for their students for their after school program. So really, if you see them if you're looking at their budget and you see them purchasing food during the summer, you see them purchasing food. If it's during the summer, it may be okay. But if it's during the school year and it doesn't specify that it's related to like a culinary arts program, then that's something that would need to be kind of questioned. Okay. I know you can't question them, but it should be like a red flag. Okay. All right. Other unauthorized activities. They again can't take field trips whose sole or primary purpose is entertainment. So they can't go to places like amusement parks, skating rinks, baseball games, jump parks, things like that. They cannot provide. Okay, so a good question popped up. What about food for family engagement activities? So we have not given them that permission yet, but it is in the works. We do plan. That is something that has newly been allowed with our Title I funding. but there's like a formula in place to figure out how much they can spend on that type of activity. And so we need to come up with something similar for 21st century. So right now, it's not something that they're aware of being allowed to do, but it is definitely something that coming down the line. So if they mention that, then I wouldn't say count that against them as long as it seems reasonable. Because they may be thinking about the fact that it's just recently become allowed for some of our other title programs. We just don't have we don't have like limits set yet for that yet. So they haven't really necessarily been told that they can do that yet. What would be an example of a marketing activity that wasn't for student participants? Okay, so that's a great question. So yes, so that's one of the things listed as unauthorized. We have seen before where like a CBO was trying to charge the 21st Century Grant the full cost of their website because they mentioned the fact that they had a 21st Century program on their website. So they tried to charge the cost of their website to the grant, and that wasn't allowable because um, having a website is not something that's required of them for being with 21st Century. They had the website already anyway before having the program, and so charging the cost of their website to 21st Century just didn't make any sense. So things like that. Other things would be like purchasing, marketing, like cups with the school name on it for the kids with 21st Century program, or notebooks with the school name. Those type of marketing type things are also not considered allowable. They can purchase a t-shirt for field trip purposes, but the main graphic on that t-shirt is supposed to be the 21st Century logo, the Alabama 21st Century logo. They can put the school, also like a school logo on there as well, but it's not supposed to be the main graphic that's on there. So those are other examples of marketing type activities that they're really not supposed to spend money on. So anything that's like swag, I guess you would say, for the school can't be purchased with 21st Century funding. They can't provide gift cards, gift certificates, or other monetary incentives for students. They can do little trinket type incentives now. That is also kind of a new thing that they've been told that they're allowed to do, but that it does definitely need to be reasonable, and it can't be anything that's tied to money. So it can't be a gift card, it can't be any kind of monetary gift, but it can be like a trinket. So can they buy like uh, perfect attendance badges for the kids? Yes, that's fine. Can they tell children that if they read a certain number of ARI books that they'll buy them, that they can take a book home? Yes, that's fine. So it has to be, but just needs to be reasonable. And again, can't be anything that is money related. So no gift cards, nothing like that. If they want to provide gift cards for something, that they would have to get that donated by the community. They can't purchase that with 21st Century funds. Nothing that supports religious activities. And so, for example, if we did have an FBO, a faith-based organization that applied for the grant and they got it, let's say they want to send their staff to a religious conference, they probably would not be able to do that. They kind of could if they could show that most of the sessions that were going to be provided were not religious based, if they were just really showing that the sessions that they were providing are related to after school programming and not related to religion, then they could potentially pay for that type of thing with the 21st Century funds, but they would have to be able to show that. They would have to be able to show the schedule, show what sessions they were going to go to, and show that those sessions were secular and that they were related to after school or summer programming. I already talked about the marketing. they can do advertisement, like trying to get kids to join as part of their marketing. So they can do that. They can purchase a sign. They actually are expected to purchase a sign to put outside of the school building that basically shows where the entrance is to get to the 21st century program so that parents can find it easier, because sometimes the program is only located in a certain part of the building and is not necessarily in the front of the school where typical pickup and drop off normally takes place. It might occur like in the back of the building or on the side of the building. And so they can purchase a sign. They can have a professional sign made for that. But it just can't be like, of course we wouldn't want them to go purchase like an LED sign, or something like that, that's like above and beyond what's reasonable and necessary. And they cannot pay grant writers to help write their grant, and they cannot pay for fundraising activities. So if they do any kind of fundraising for their programs, they have to do that on their own dime. For example, we saw one where they purchased like chips and cookies and things like that to sell at like a family engagement activity to help raise money, but they used 21st century funds to purchase those snacks. And in their head, they were like, well, we'll reimburse it with the money we make, but that's still not an allowable thing to do. So you cannot use it for fundraising activities. All right. They cannot pay another agency to operate their 21st century program. So if they get the grant, they have to run it themselves. They can't pay somebody else to come in and run it for them. They cannot purchase any buses or vehicles. They can rent them. They can have a contract with the local school system to provide transportation for students to go home in the afternoons, but that's more of like a lease or rent situation. They can lease a bus for field trips, but they cannot purchase a bus or any kind of vehicle for their program. They cannot purchase, construct, or renovate a building. Only thing I can think of that we have allowed is we have had a couple of programs that have purchased a portable greenhouse, but it was something they had to show that it was portable. They weren't going to pay for like a slab to be put down. It was something that if the program is discontinued in the future, that greenhouse could easily be deconstructed and moved to another location. So they can purchase like a storage building, but again, it has to be something that's easily could be moved from one location to another, because technically, once they no longer have the grant, the things that they purchased with 21st century funds are supposed to go to an after school program. It can stay at the school if they're going to continue to have an after school program, but if they're not going to, then it's supposed to go to another 21st century program in their region. So they can't use the funds to like, I've seen requests for like paving the drop off area where parents are going to pick up and drop off kids, and that's not allowed. They can't renovate a building. They can't install. They're not even really supposed to install anything into the building. Okay, but they can use funds for subcontractors for vendors, right? Yes. Okay. So the question was they can use funds for subcontractors for vendors. Yes, if they're providing a service. So if they have someone that's coming in to provide art instruction, then they can do that. They can contract for, we call that purchase services. They can have like a professional come in and provide activities. They can do that. It's just they can't pay for somebody to come in and paint, like paint the room that the 21st century program is going to take place in, or they can't come in and like put in a new water line for the kids to have a water fountain closer to where the 21st century program is going to take place, something like that. That's not an allowable thing. They cannot use funds to purchase clothing for employees or students, except for in cases of a field trip t-shirt. Okay. They can purchase field trip t-shirts. Well, there's another case too. So let me rephrase that. there's only certain conditions where they can purchase clothing, okay? One of them is for field trips. So for the safety of the students, they can purchase like a bright colored field trip shirt for the students, but the expectation is they would use that field trip shirt the whole year long, okay? So we're not going to buy a new shirt each time we're going to go on a field trip. They can purchase one field trip shirt. The logo on that shirt has to primarily be the 21st Century logo. It can have the school logo on it as well. But that has to be the 21st Century logo, has to be the dominant graphic. And they're supposed to reuse those shirts throughout the year. What I normally tell them is I would suggest that they purchase like an additional few shirts in each size so that if a student loses their shirt, they can borrow one, but I wouldn't, they're allowed to like give those shirts to the students for them to wear each time they go on a field trip, and the student can now keep them at home. But if they lose that shirt, then if they're given another shirt, then it needs to be taken back from the student. Like it just needs to be put on over an existing t-shirt and kept by the school for other students who may lose their shirts. And then, yes, they could potentially purchase that same shirt for the staff that's going on the field trip and maybe even the parents. But again, with the parents one, I've told them that really needs to be more of a borrow type situation, not where we're just going to give parents a t-shirt every time they come on a field trip, because that could get quite expensive. Excuse me. Okay, so the other times when they can purchase clothing is if it is a set of clothing that is needed for proper safety or movement for an activity. So, for example, if they are providing ballet classes, we had this happen at one of our sites. They were providing ballet instruction for the students. They had a true ballet instructor that was coming in and working with the students, and this was in a very, very low income area that most students could not afford to go to a ballet studio, and so they were allowed to purchase like leotards and tights and proper ballet shoes for those students to use during the ballet class so that they could have the proper movement and have the right shoes and things like that for that class. But what they could keep and reuse from year to year, that's what they expected to do. So like if they could keep the shoes and repurpose them the next year, whatever was safe to do. Like for example, tights and things like that, they wouldn't necessarily have to reuse those from year to year, but it has to be within reason. But they can be allowed to do stuff like that. Apron for an art class, yes, that would probably be fine. But again, it would be expected they keep it at the school and it's just reused every time. Same thing if they're doing like a science STEM activities and they're going to get messy. They could purchase little lab coats for the kids to wear, but they would need to remain at the school and not go home with the kids. So yes, things like that are okay. But it's just, we do ask that they get it pre-approved so that we can just kind of keep an eye on it. Because we did have a situation before where they were doing something similar to the ballet, but they were also trying to purchase like costumes for a recital, multiple costumes each year for a recital, and that was not allowed. They could have what was needed to keep things safe, but they couldn't then go and purchase a bunch of cute costumes for a recital. They had to come up with ways to do that themselves, create the costumes themselves, or get the community to donate or whatever. But they couldn't use the 21st Century funds for that. Okay. All right, so that's it when it comes to authorized and unauthorized. So hopefully that's helpful as you're reviewing the applications. All right, so in component 3B, we're continuing what we were talking about before. When they're describing their strategies and activities, they are asked to provide specific activities for students that will be undertaken to meet each project objective. They need to talk about the number of hours per week, days of the week, number of weeks per year, and the total number of program hours that the site will provide those services. Again, so that's so you know, is this feasible or not? If they're providing 5 different activities and they're saying that all of them are going to occur every day throughout the entire year, is that really feasible? Okay. So just think about that type of thing. They need to talk about specific activities that will happen during summer programming, if they're going to have a summer program. They need to talk about proposed academic and enrichment activities. Um, if they're going to provide, when they talk about providing academic and academic enrichment activities, they do need to talk about. They have been asked to point out the evidence-based research and best practices that will be used during those academic activities. They are supposed to provide academic activities that are based on the measures of effectiveness. So they are supposed to mention that when they are describing those academic activities. And then they should mention how those instructional activities and teaching strategies will be innovative, engaging, how they're going to be coordinated with activities that occur during the school year. Or if it's a summer program, how they're going to prepare students for the upcoming school year, and how the activities will enhance academic performance, achievement, post-secondary and workforce preparation, and positive youth development of students. So those are all things that they've been instructed to include in their narrative for 3B. This is this scoring rubric for 3B. Again, it's out of 20 points. So they would get 18 to 20 points if they have provided a description of activities that are innovative, engaging, clearly mapped to objectives in Form 9. And they have talked about research citations. They've talked about how they are research or evidence-based activities. They've provided detailed activities for each objective. They've told you the hours of the week, weeks per year, total hours provided, who's going to provide the activities. All of those details have been given. They've given details about their summer program. They have a strong evidence-based rationale with sources of why those activities are going to be successful, and how they've coordinated it with their school day learning. Okay, so that would get them at 18 to 20. All right, again, I'm not going to read all these rubrics to you, but we do want you guys to use these rubrics so that we know that everybody is being scored kind of the same way, so that it is as fair and equitable as possible, no matter who this score is. Okay. All right. Next is component 3C, student and family support. That is 10 points. In this narrative, they're supposed to talk about the projected services, including meals and activities that will be provided to support students and their families. Again, they should be talking about public and private school students if they plan to serve private school students. They should mention how many family members will be served. They can talk about additional social and or behavioral services that are going to be provided. Types of snacks, meals that will be served daily. How are they going to be prepared? How will they be funded? Okay. So again, during the school year, they should say that snacks or meals, we do have some sites where their CMP program does actually provide them a meal in the afternoon, but sometimes it's just a simple snack. But they should be mentioning working with their CMP program during the school year. If it's talking about the summer, then they may actually talk about it being funded with 21st century funds. Okay, that's fine either way. They should be mentioning specific activities that they will be providing to address literacy and the related education needs of the families, including involvement of the district's Title I, family literacy, adult education coordinators, things like that, to provide services to families. So they need to talk here about what kind of services they're going to be providing to the families in there, of the students they serve. And again, they need to mention any services that will be provided during their summer program if they're going to have one. Okay, here is the rubric for that one. A second to look at that. Okay. Notice in this one, they would get 3 to 5 points if they have limited details when they're talking about the services they're going to provide. Snacks and meals are unclear. They have a weak family literacy plan. This would show that they're at risk of being non-compliant or underserving families, and so their points should be so they should be awarded somewhere between the 3 to 5 point range if that's what you're seeing in their narrative. Okay, component 3D, evaluation. Again, this is 10 points. This is where we expect them to describe the outcome measures that are going to be used to assess the impact of their program on student learning, attendance, and behavior. They should describe the type of data that they're going to collect, how and when that data is going to be collected and analyzed, who is going to collect that data or analyze it, along with their external evaluator. So who, along with their external evaluator, is going to be responsible for data collection, how those results are going to be presented to demonstrate that each objective has been met. They should explain how the data is going to be analyzed and reported through their external evaluator, and then how that information is going to be used to improve the quality of their program for the next year. And again, these evaluation activities must be listed also on that Form 9 multi-year program design and performance form. Okay, here's the rubric for component 3D. All right, I'm not going to read these to you. Again, we're going to provide you a worksheet that has all of these rubrics on there so that you can go through and assign the scores on paper first and then put them into EGAP, which is the way I would do it. You know, you don't have to do it that way, but we do definitely want you to at least use these rubrics when you're picking your scores. All right, component 4. Component 4 is management. This is talking about capacity, collaboration, and governance. We asked them to provide a narrative that fully explains how their 21st century project, including their summer program, if they're having one, will be implemented efficiently and effectively, and how they would resolve any challenges or obstacles that they may have. They need to talk about the evidence of successful experience or capacity to succeed in providing this 21st century program. So they could talk about success they've had in the past in managing similar projects. They may mention clearly defined job descriptions and qualifications of their key staff. They can talk about the plans and budget for ongoing staff training, professional development. These are all things that they should talk about in this narrative. What kind of professional development that their staff is going to go through, including their topics, potential facilitators, how often it's going to occur. We do ask them to provide at least 10 hours of professional development to their entire staff. Just making you aware of that. They should describe how their project was developed and will be conducted in active collaboration with other organizations, including other schools or LEAs, community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, and other public and private organizations. So this is where they should mention like their partnerships, their community partners. Again, explain how challenges and obstacles will resolve if they come up. They should mention their advisory council and who is going to be a member who are going to be the members of their advisory council. So they should explain the council's role in project planning, implementation, monitoring, adjustment. They're supposed to meet with their advisory council at least twice per year. So they should mention that. And then they are supposed to talk about a description of plans to coordinate their federal, state, and local programs with their 21st century program so that they're most effectively using their public resources. So without supplanting. So they may talk about Title I funds also being used towards after-school programming. They may talk about adult education, summer reading and math camps, McKinney-Vento funding, any other funding that they have available to them that can be used after school or during the summer camps, they should mention how they're going to coordinate those funds with their 21st century funds. Okay. This is the rubric for component 4 management for A. All right. Then in 4B, they're going to talk about communication and school day collaboration. This is something we really want to see them do that I don't think that they're really doing very well at this time. We're going to work on it. But we want them to tell us how they want them to tell us in their narrative how the project will be implemented efficiently and effectively, how the challenges and obstacles will be resolved by explaining the strategies they're going to use to disseminate information about their 21st century program, which need to include its location, to the community in an understandable and accessible manner. So that's one of the requirements of the feds, is that they share information about their 21st century program to the community. So they need to explain how they're going to do that. They need to explain how they're going to notify the community of that they applied for their 21st century program. So they should have already done that. They should mention how did they put out a news article? Did they send out a memo? How did they let the community know that they were going to apply for this grant? And then what are they going to do to make the application and any kind of waiver request, if they have one, available to the public for review after it's been submitted? So they're supposed to make their application available to the public. They're also supposed to discuss who is going to be responsible for disseminating information to students, parents, and the community in a manner that's understandable and accessible. So if they talk about having, like if they mention somewhere that they have a high population of EL students who do not, whose primary language is not English, then when they're talking about communicating with parents and the community, they should be mentioning things, like how they are going to have, they're going to provide communication in other languages as well to meet the needs of those families. They should talk about the specific information that they're going to provide, such as student performance, upcoming activities, schedules, leaders, who are the leaders, community stakeholders they're working with, a timeline for communication. All of that should be mentioned. And this is a big one. They are supposed to have a collaboration liaison with each school they're working with. So they're supposed to have at least one staff member whose not sole responsibility, but whose responsibility it is to communicate with school day teachers to make sure that the 21st century program, that the activities that are being provided are aligned and are helping to support the school day activities. So they need to mention how often the communication is going to take place. Is it going to be a daily, weekly interaction between the 21st century program and the school day teachers, so that when they're providing these activities, they can make sure that they're touching on the things that the kids are learning during the school day. Again, this is something that we are working on trying to make better. So we want to see that they have a good plan of how they're going to do this. Okay. All right. So here is the rubric for that one. All right. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second. Does anyone have any other questions up to this point? I know it's a lot of talking, a lot of sitting and getting, and I'm sorry. Technically, this could be an all-day training, but trying to keep it to 3 hours. If you have to take a break, feel free to go and come back. But I'm just going to keep on trucking along, okay? All right. Great. It looks like everybody's okay. Okay, good. All right. The next part is component 5. This is the last component, I believe, and this is where they're supposed to talk about the adequacy of resources and sustainability. It is divided into several parts. So in the first part, 5A, they're supposed to talk about their staffing, site building, safety, and partner contributions. So in this part, they're going to talk about the staffing of the 21st century like talk about how they're going to maintain proper participant teacher ratios of 12-1. It should be around the 12-1. That is not a mandatory thing. It's just a suggestion that we provide to them, but we do ask them to keep their parent teacher ratios in that area. While I'm thinking about that, I do want to mention that because they're allowed to have a lot more money, we have noticed that some sites may be hiring way more staff than what is necessary. So keep an eye on that when you go and look at their budget. If they're planning to serve 50 students, then they shouldn't be hiring 10 after school teachers to serve 50 students, because that is way above and beyond the 12-1 participant teacher ratio. Okay. So that's an extreme example, but we've seen it happen. We upped the amount of funding they could get so that they could spend funds on purchasing more materials and supplies and providing more experiences to the students, not so that more staff members could be hired. And that's unfortunately what we keep seeing happen, is that the sites are wanting to spend a majority of their money, no matter how much money it is, on staff. And if that's needed, that's great. But if that's not the need, then we would rather see them spend the money on, again, on providing like purchasing some great equipment and out of the box, materials and supplies that normally those students wouldn't have access to, or providing them with some experiences like those field trips and things like that, going to see things that they not necessarily would normally get to go see. So just be mindful of that when you're looking at their budget. They also need to mention in this any plans they have to recruit and use appropriately qualified volunteers, especially senior citizens. That's like something that the federal government asks us to have in here. They want to see that that the community center is actually trying to get volunteers from the community to come in and work, including senior citizens. Just trying to build that community. Okay. They need to talk about the site that's going to be used for their program. It should detail things like the square footage, safety measures, accessibility. It should talk about any facilities, equipment, supplies, and other resources that are available that make it the best site for the 21st century program. If the program is located in a public elementary or secondary school, it should be fine. But if they plan to have their 21st century site in a building that is someplace other than a public elementary or secondary school, they need to describe how that alternative facility will be at least as available and accessible to participants as the 21st century program that's located in elementary or secondary school. Okay. If it is housed, okay, so if the program is housed in an eligible school or LEA owned facility, they should speak about how that program follows that school's comprehensive safety plan, and they should address how their extended day or summer program safety plan differentiates from the overall school's plan. They should briefly address the following safety measures or plans. And so they should talk briefly about fire drills and evacuation routes, severe weather alerts, drills and plans, bus safety drills if they're providing transportation, crisis management plan. This would be like, active shooter type situations, emergency intruder plan, again, active shooter, what is their plan if they have to get the students out of the building quickly? They should talk about illness, injury, and accident plan, how they're going to handle the administration of medication, staff and student medical health plans, and disaster preparedness. So tornadoes are big here in Alabama. So what is their plan for that? So again, they don't have to provide like huge details, but they should touch on each of those safety measures and plans and kind of just give you a brief description. And then finally, I believe for this one, They need to talk about their partner contributions. So, for example, financial and non-financial support that's being provided by their community partners. So they have a Form 7 that I think it's Form 7, that you're welcome to go look at. That is where they explain who their community partners are going to be. And so this is where they should be mentioning what is involved in those community partnerships. What are they going to be providing that makes them a community partner? Are they going to are they going to provide mentors? We see that a lot with churches. A lot of times the churches will provide like male adult mentors for male students or female. Is it a grocery store that's going to help provide snacks during the summer? Are they going to provide facility use? Is the church going to let us use their gym? Are they going to provide any kind of supplies or materials, things like that? So this is where they should talk about those contributions that are going to be provided by their community partners. All right, here is the rubric for 5A. Okay. All right. 5B is where they should discuss their transportation plan. Even if they don't plan to provide transportation for the students to or from their programs, either after school or during the summer, they still have to have a transportation plan because the students are still going to either be dropped off at their program or transported to their program. If it's in the same school building as the students that are attending, then that may not be the worry, but the concern should be, okay, how are the students going to get home after the program is over during the school or during the summer? How are the kids going to get there and how are they going to get home? So they should talk about a detailed transportation plan that explains how students, both public and private, if they're serving private students, will travel safely to and from the 21st Century Center and back home as required under federal law. They have to include transportation details for before school, Saturday, and summer programs if they plan to have those. So if they mention offering before school, Saturday, or summer programming, which I don't think most of them will, but there are a couple that might, then they also need to mention that in their transportation plan. They should talk about safety compliance regarding parental permissions. How are students that walk or drive to and from the program, how is that going to be handled? What about permissions for field trips? So again, if a student is walking or driving home from a program, then you need to have they need to have some sort of parental permission in place for them to do that, for the students to do that. Same thing with field trips. There needs to be some sort of procedures they have for getting parental permissions for students to go on field trips. They should have procedures for secure drop-off, pickup, sign in, sign out of students. Again, they need to have a plan for what happens if the student does not show up for the program. They can't just say, okay, Billy's not here today. They need to have a plan of how they're going to reach out to the parents to make sure that Billy's not supposed to be there. Okay, so they need to mention that. They need to talk about who transportation will be provided by. If they're not providing transportation, then they may say it's going to be provided by the parents. They may say it's going to be provided by the school system. If they're providing the transportation, then they need to say whose buses are providing that transportation. Is it the LEA, the school system's buses that are going to be used? Are we going to rent buses from a company? Not rent buses, but do a lease situation where another company that has experience providing transportation to young people is going to be taking those students home. So who's going to be providing that transportation? And then if it's a non-school site, then they need to give the round trip distance in miles from the site to each targeted school to be served. So we need to know if you're choosing to have the 21st Century Center somewhere other than at a school, how far is that location from the schools where the students are going to be coming from? Is it feasible? Are you spending 30 minutes getting the kid 30 minutes or an hour getting kids from their school to that after school, to that 21st century center? So they need to be explaining that. If they're providing transportation to students who attend schools in rural areas, which is determined by their REAP eligibility, they should contact the district in which the program will take place to determine if they're eligible for that. So that statement is really for CBOs or FBOs who a school system should know whether they are REAP eligible or whether they are actually considered rural or not. But if the applicants were told that if they were unsure, that they should reach out to the school system that they're serving to find out if they are serving schools in rural areas. And then finally, any other transportation details, such as, any kind of management, field trip, car rider details that they can provide that's pertinent to the 21st century program, they should include in that plan. Here is the rubric for the transportation plan, part 5B. Okay. All right. And then 5C is where they need to talk about sustainability. This 21st century program is not intended to be a permanent after school program funding program. The purpose of it is to get communities and schools started with providing an after school or summer program, and they're really supposed to at some point become sustainable on their own without 21st century funding. It's not always the case, but we want them to understand that that is the plan, that they should not plan on getting 21st century funding every 3 to 5 years, that that the 21st century is supposed to really kind of be used as seed funding to kind of get their program started, but they should always be seeking out other funding opportunities to sustain their program. And so this is where they will talk about that sustainability. They have to tell us their funding plan, including goals and objectives in years 1 and 2, names of partners and their commitments. Sorry, this looks weird. And the contributions of those partners. So are they providing any kind of financial or in-kind contributions, other revenue resources, and any other strategies that they're going to use for sustainability? They should have a plan in place of how costs will be covered if funds are either decreased or when the subgrant funds cease to exist. So when they no longer have the funds, they should have a plan in place for that. So this is 10 points, and this is the rubric for their sustainability plan. Okay. All right. So that's the components. Last year, if you helped us out last year, we actually had a component for the budget, and it was a lot of repetitive information. We asked them to describe their budget in the application details. Then they had to do their narratives in the budget itself, and they had to put it in their Form 9. And so there was lots of complaints about having to do the same, to provide the same information in multiple places. And so this year we decided that instead of having them describe their budget in the application details, they are just going to be a little bit more verbose in the actual budget that they provide. So when it gets to this point of the application, you would exit out of the application details and go to the actual program budget and look and see what they have written in their budget. Okay. Typically, when a site does their budget, their actual budget, they don't provide extreme detailed information about the budget. We do ask them to detail things like breakdown of salaries so that we can see if the salaries that they're paying are reasonable and necessary. But we have asked them to be a little bit more, to provide more information than they typically would in this first year of the budget, since we're not having them do it in the application details. Okay. So what you're going to be looking for is just, you're going to be reading through their budget and looking for whether the things that they have in their budget are related to that Form 9, that multi-year program design and performance form, and whether the things that their budget match what they said their activities and what their objectives are for their program. So um, So they're told that all proposed expenditures, including those related to their summer program for the first year of their grant, should be included in their program budget. Now, I do want to point something out. If you're watching something else right now, I do want everybody to listen to this comment, okay? Because this can get kind of confusing. In the first year of their grant, because Alabama, our fiscal year is different than most states' fiscal year for education. Our fiscal year actually starts October 1st and runs through September 30th, even though the federal government gives us 21st century funds on July 1st. Okay. So, what we do in the first year of the grant, we started this last year, we're doing it again this year, is we're allowing them to actually start drawing down funds as early as July 1st. They do have to kind of, once they've gotten the grant, they do have to kind of complete a separate application where a portion of their funds will go into that. And we call it pre-award costs, even though technically that's not really what they are. It just allows them to start spending funds in the before October 1st, because the expectation from the feds is that they begin their program on the first day of school and that it ends on the last day of school. But if we don't give them money until October 1st, that's not very fair to ask them to do that. So in the first year of their budget, they really kind of have to make their budget stretch from the typical 36-week school year to a 44-week year, because they actually need to stretch their funds to start on the first day of school, which is typically towards the beginning of August. And they'll have to stretch until the next year's September 30th. Okay. This has been explained to them, but some may not have been paying attention or may not have come to the meetings that explain these things. And so you may see one of two things in their budget. You may see them budget for 44 weeks. You may see them budget for 36 weeks. Either one is fine. Once they've gotten the grant, we will help them fix that here at the State Department. We'll help them figure out how they need to move their funding around to make sure they can actively cover their expenses from the beginning of the school year, and actually really before that, because they are expected to do some professional development before even the first day of school. So we will help them redistribute those funds if they did not already have that in mind, that they were going to have to make those funds stretch. So you may see it either way. Either way is fine with us, as long as if they are going to mention how many weeks they're serving during the school year, they need to be serving at least 36 weeks. Okay. It's not referring to the summer. Summer funding is actually kind of separate. It's in the same budget, but it has a different object code. It says it's for summer. So if they're talking about expenses during the school year, they need to be serving their students at least 36 weeks. They may also say they're serving them 44 weeks or somewhere in between the two. And that's fine either way. Okay. So don't worry about if you see that. Now, if they say that they're serving them way less than 36 weeks, that is a problem. That indicates that they don't plan to serve their students the entire school year, which would be out of compliance with the grant. We don't necessarily make them start on the first day, but we do make them start on the first day of the first full week of school. Because a lot of schools here in Alabama, especially for elementary, they'll actually start their first day like on a Thursday, where the kids will just come on Thursday and Friday, and then I guess just to kind of get their feet wet, and then they come back on the next Monday. We have told our sites that they could start their program on that next Monday when they come back, but other than that, they're expected to have their programs run from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year. So I just wanted to point that out because you may see some inconsistencies from application to application. but as long as they're at least serving 36 weeks, it's fine. Okay. And the only time they probably would mention that is if they're breaking down their salaries of like their employees, which we do ask them to do. Again, we want to make sure that what they're paying their employees is reasonable and necessary, especially their administrative staff. We've seen a lot of issues in the past where sites are trying to pay administrative staff way more than what is necessary to run the program. And so we do kind of give them some guidelines on what the expectations should be for their administrative staff. But, you know, that's why we ask them to kind of break those salaries down. So when I say break it down, I don't want them to just say, we're going to pay this person $30,000 a year. I want them to say, we're paying them to work 3 hours a day, 5 days a week for 36 weeks, totaling, we're going to pay them X amount per hour, and that totals $30,000 per year. Okay, so that's the expectation. Each budget line item should have a complete narrative that explains how that line item is tied to their goals, objectives, strategies, and activities. On this one, I just told them they don't have to spell out the exact goals and objectives, but they could say that this is going to help us meet performance goal 1, objective 1B, you know, by providing this activity. They can go into that kind of detail. Again, anything they have in their budget should be tied back to their multi-year program design and performance form. The only thing I can think that may not be in that form would be like professional development for their staff. They may be able to tie that directly to an objective, but they may not. But, you know, that kind of thing is expected as being part of an expense with hiring staff. Same thing with like benefits. Of course, they should have benefits in their budget for their salaried staff that may not be mentioned in their Form 9. Main thing is that the items that they've mentioned in their budget are reasonable, necessary, allowable, and allocable. We want to make sure that what they're paying is a reasonable amount. If you see that they're paying, like, I just keep referring back to this golf pro, I don't know why golf is on my mind, but if you see they're paying this golf pro to come in and provide an hour of instruction per week, and they want to pay them $300 for that 1 hour of instruction, to me, that's a red flag. Is there not someone who could do that at a more reasonable price, right? If they're paying someone to come in and provide art instruction, they're only paying their certified teachers $40 an hour, but they want to pay someone to come in from the outside to provide art instruction $300 an hour. That's just not, that's not reasonable, right? So just look for things like that, that the things that they're providing are reasonable and necessary. We don't expect you to catch every little thing. We just want we want you to look at their budget and see that they have a good plan, and that most of the things that appear to be in that plan do seem to be related to their program goals and objectives, and they do make sense, okay? We don't want you to necessarily go in and add and make sure their salaries are reasonable and all that sort of thing. We will check that if they get the funding. We just want you to look over their budget in general. Now, we would like you to look at the caps if possible. Again, if you don't catch everything, that's fine, but do keep in mind that they are supposed to have certain caps that can't be exceeded. So, for example, their professional development costs for both administrators and instructional staff can't exceed 10% of their grant award. So in your case, what we would ask you to do is, if it looks like they've got so much professional development being provided that it's going to exceed 10%, that's a red flag. That's something that you might want to deduct some points for. It doesn't have to be exact, but you should be able to kind of say, okay, they're asking for $200,000. 10% of that would be $2,000, but they're talking about sending all their staff members to a conference in Vegas, and they're wanting to spend $10,000 on that. that's not necessarily reasonable or necessary. Okay. So things like that. They are supposed to have an external evaluator. That person's pay cannot exceed $6,000 or 3% of the grant award, whichever is less. We've had some try to pay their external evaluators an outrageous amount of money, and so that's why we put this into place. Transportation costs may not exceed 30% of their grant award, and then their general administrative, summer administrative, and indirect costs combined may not exceed 30% of the grant award. So again, we just want you to kind of keep those caps in mind. And if something stands out to you that seems like it's outrageously above the cap, we want you to kind of make a note of that, and mark their, score their application accordingly if you're seeing that they're going crazy above the caps that have been given to them. They should have a $900 yearly cost for easy reports in their application. And they should have travel and costs associated with mandatory professional development for their administrators. So those are things that you should look for that they have included in their budget. All right, so this is the scoring criteria for the budget. It is 50 points. It is a lot of points, okay? So notice in this, like if you're going to give them 45 to 50 points, they should have complete, compliant academic year and summer budget. Each line should be linked through their narrative to the goals, objectives, strategies, and activities. Their caps should be met. PD should not be more than 10%. Transportation should not be more than 30%. Admin and direct costs should not be more than 30%. And they do include their easy reports and their mandatory PD and travel. So if they have a very strong fiscal design, it's traceable to their program activities and aligns with allowability and allocability, then you can give them full points, okay? If they, on the flip side of that, if they have major omissions, they have multiple caps that have been violated, they don't explain how what they want to purchase is related to their program goals and objectives, then you might want to score them in the 0 to 19 area. If you can tell right away that their budget would not be approved without significant changes being made to it, then they need to score lower. The other thing we want you to check for or make a note of as you're checking the budget is the different job or staff members they plan to hire. Suggest that you write those down, just make a little note. So if they mention that they're going to hire teachers, if they mention they're going to hire teacher assistants, they're going to have a program director, a site coordinator, a nurse, a bus driver, any of these positions that are mentioned, they are supposed to provide a job description for, a full job description for, which is one of the other things that we do want you guys to look at. So that you'll know which job descriptions that they should have uploaded. We do ask that you make a note of those different jobs that you see in the budget as you're going along so that you can make sure that a job description has been uploaded for each of those positions. All right, the next thing we want you to look at is their Form 8 weekly schedules, okay? This is, you're going to go to related documents and go to Form 8. And we ask that they create a weekly schedule for both their academic year and the summer. If they're not going to have a summer program, then they only have to have one for the academic year. We're trying to check for that ahead of time. And technically, if they didn't provide both, they're supposed to be disqualified from getting the grant, okay? Anyway. The activities listed in their weekly schedule should match those that they're describing in component 3B, their program design and their application details, and their Form 9. So we want to see it. It doesn't have to be extremely detailed, but it does need to be detailed enough that you can see that they actually have a plan of when they're going to provide these activities they said they were going to provide, okay? It must include the following details: the adequate duration and frequency of instructional and enrichment activities offered for each grade level. So it should be broken down per grade level, per activity. So it may be as simple as showing you, okay, first graders from 3 o'clock to 3:30 are going to have snack and character development. From 3:30 to 4, they're going to have academic enrichment, math, or literacy activities. They don't have to go into specifically exactly what those activities are, but they should have a specific time of the day, of the week, where they do specific types of activities. And that's what we would like to see. Again, it doesn't have to be specific as to what exactly that activity is every day, but it should be a good general description of every Tuesday, we're going to do math. We're going to do some sort of math enrichment activity. Every Thursday from 4 to 4:30, we're going to do some sort of literacy activity. So sometimes it may be differentiated based on the day, and sometimes it would be differentiated based on, on certain days they're going to do certain things different than on other days. Okay. It also should say the location of the activity and the person responsible for facilitating the activity, if known. If they don't have these two things, I would not be as harshly count that against them. They have been asked to put that so that when we go and actually see their programs, we'll know where to go. But those details at this second are not crazy important. So the main thing we want to see is just that they are actually incorporating time in their schedules to do the things they said they were going to do. Because if they don't have that in their schedule, that is a huge red flag that they said they're going to do things. That was just lip service, that they were just saying they were going to do these great things, but they actually don't plan to implement them, which unfortunately we see quite frequently. Okay. If they have the activities they said they were going to do in this weekly schedule, that's a good indication to us that they do plan to actually do that activity. But if they don't have it in there, then that is a huge red flag to us that they just said that they were going to do that to make their application sound good and to get the funding, but they don't actually plan to actually do it. So that's why this is really important, and we want you guys to look at these carefully. Okay, so we've got the rubric here for you to use when you're scoring that. And then again, the final document is no, I'm sorry, there's two more. So you've got your Form 9 multi-year program design and performance form. You should be looking at this document the whole time you're looking at the rest of the application. So we remind you several times throughout to make sure that these items have been placed into this Form 9. But hopefully by now you'll have a good idea if this was done the right way and if it's complete. So again, they should have the required program goals and objectives that we've given them. Also, any additional performance goals needed as indicated by their needs assessment, which again is optional. They didn't have to add additional performance goals, but they could. The required objectives for performance goals 1 through 3 should be listed in there without any changes to the wording or their target percentage. They should have any additional objectives needed as indicated by their needs assessment for performance goals 1 through 3. Again, that's optional. They are allowed to add more objectives, but they don't have to. And then they should have at least one SMART objective and target percentage for each of the required performance goals 4 through 6. Hopefully they have more than one objective for 4 through 6, but they're required to have at least one. And those objectives should be SMART objectives. The strategies and activities for each objective that are aligned with the narrative in component 3B of the application details. So they should have that listed. And of course, their data sources and evaluation methods that they're going to use to determine if each activity they're providing is actually beneficial to their students. And then finally, in the last column is their budget items for each activity or strategy, if applicable. that are aligned with their program budget. All right. This is the rubric for Form 9. So again, if they have several rows incomplete, weak data sources, or budget mapping, they haven't really added any objectives. You can tell they haven't really identified needs. It's hard to assess their feasibility. You would score them into 7 to 12 range. Okay. And then the final thing that I've already mentioned that we would like you to look at are the job descriptions. We expect a job description to be uploaded for each 21st century staff position that's described in the program's budget. Please note that the example job descriptions were given to them for the program director and site coordinator. They were given to them in the RFA, and hopefully you'll pull the RFA and look at it, but you'll see those. Those were given to them as examples only. They were not supposed to be just copied and pasted and used for all the other positions or used for their program director and site coordinator. They were just given as examples. But I've already seen several cases where they've just copied and pasted the example that we gave them without making any changes to it. So make note of that if you see that that has occurred. But each job description should have a job title and summary, the reporting structure of who that person is going to report to, what the position's required knowledge, skills, abilities, and qualifications are, and then what that person's essential duties and responsibilities are going to be. Please note that multiple positions should not have the same duties and responsibilities. We use these job descriptions quite frequently when we're trying to determine if pay is reasonable and necessary. If they've put like for their administrative staff, if they put that their program director and their site coordinator and their data person and their CFO is all going to be responsible for the exact same duties, then that's an issue. That's a problem. That's where they haven't thought through who is going to really be in charge of what activities and what responsibilities. And do I really need both a program director and site coordinator and a data collection person and all these other administrative positions? Do I really need all of those? So that's what we would like you to look at those and just make sure that that they are there for one thing, and that they do provide this information that's needed. I will say this. What we tell the sites is that if they are missing anything, then they're disqualified from the program. We've started, the applications were due on Friday, and we started going through those applications last week. And there are several applications that were missing like one job description. Or two job descriptions, and we didn't want to disqualify their entire application just because they were missing one or two job descriptions. And so we're going to justify that by saying our peer reviewers are going to be looking for these job descriptions, and they are going to score accordingly. So if you see that job descriptions are missing, please give them a low score because they haven't done what they were asked to do. Which is much better than us disqualifying their entire application just because they're missing a couple of job descriptions. So this is something that we would like you guys to look at and help us with making sure that those descriptions have been uploaded and they look the way they're supposed to look. Okay. Finally, competitive priorities. So we have 5 competitive priorities this cohort. Priority 1 is applications that have been submitted jointly. Now, one thing we noticed from last year was our first time doing a new cohort application. And something that we noticed is that people were saying that they had a joint partner when they really didn't have a joint partner. The person they were saying was their joint partner was really more of a community partner, okay? According to the feds, a joint applicant is supposed to have almost equal they're supposed to be equal in both the development of the program plan and implementing the program. So they are supposed to help with all aspects. So both joint partners are supposed to contribute equally to the partnership, right? So they should both be providing management. They should both be providing like activity support and things like that throughout the program, not just they serve on the advisory committee. Okay. So, so a true joint applicant is when you've got an LEA and a CBO, or you've just got two entities. One of them has to be an LEA that are working together to provide this program together and equally. So if they say they've submitted the application jointly, but it really doesn't look like there's an equal effort between the two, the applicant and the co-applicant, then maybe they don't need to get those priority points, because really, truly, they're just a community partner that's only providing a little bit of what consists of the entire program. If we see that's happening, we'll try to reach out to you and let you know. I've already started making notes of ones that I've seen in the applications, so we'll try to reach out to the scores and just say, hey, that's not really a true partnership. It's really more of a community partner, so they don't get those priority points. Okay, priority 2 is schools and improvement. 5 bonus points will be awarded to applications that propose to serve students who attend a school that is currently designated by the ALSDE as Comprehensive Support and Improvement, CSI, Targeted Support and Improvement, TSI, or Additional Targeted Support and Improvement, ATSI. CSI schools are identified as being the bottom 5% of their Title I schools, or they have a graduation rate that's at or below 67%. TSI schools are schools with one or more subgroups that are at or below the 75th percentile of the CSI schools with no improvement after 2 years. And ATSI schools are schools with one or more subgroups that are in the bottom 5% of the Title I schools. So we are checking these ahead of time to see if they said that they are serving a school that's in improvement, but they're really not. We will try to reach out to you guys and let you know that you don't need to give them those priority points. There's already been several that we have found that have said I think they just don't know what it means, to be honest with you. I don't necessarily think that they necessarily were trying to be sketchy in any way. A lot of times the CBOs or FBOs don't really understand what in improvement means when it comes from the State Department. They'd say, oh yeah, they're low poverty and they're struggling, so they're schools that are in improvement, even though it's been explained to them that they have to be actually designated this by the state in order to get these priority points. But again, some people don't come to the meetings and don't listen to us talk about it, and so they just read it and say, oh yeah, they're that, and then they mark them. They say that they're serving schools that are in improvement, but they're really not. So we'll try to let you guys know if that is the case. If you're judging an application where that has occurred. Okay, priority 3 is ESSA targeted services priority. This is a federal requirement that we have as a priority. So a lot of them may claim this as a priority, and they probably should, because it's just 5 bonus points will be awarded to applications that will enroll students who may be at risk for academic failure, dropping out of school, involvement in criminal or delinquent activities, or who lack strong positive role models. They have been asked to provide evidence that this is occurring and to kind of, again, point out to you where that evidence is in the application. Hopefully they'll do that. They may not. But if you see them mentioning any of these things, that they're serving these students, that meet any of these criteria, then they can be awarded those priority points. Priority 4 is that 5 bonus points will be awarded to applications that demonstrate that the proposed activities the activities they propose to provide are not accessible to students who would be served, or would expand accessibility to high quality services that may be available in the community. So the way I've explained this to our applicants is that if their program is going to provide, say, a service that the kids in the community either don't have access to or their access is limited, then but you're going to provide it as part of your after school program or your summer program, then you can get these priority points. So going back to my golf example, let's say that there is not a golf there's not a golf range or whatever in the community, but you're going to provide students with golf lessons. That is providing them with a service that they don't have accessibility to. Okay. On the flip side of that, let's say that there is a golf why can I not think of what it's called? Anyway, a golf range in the community, but it's a community club. It's like only people that are wealthy have access to it. There's it's some kind of country club type situation, and most of the kids that attend that school probably don't have access to that country club. So that is again, it's a service that is provided in the community, but most kids don't have access to it due to not having the finances to be able to do it or whatever. That would also be an example. Another thing could be like swimming lessons. Maybe there is a community center that offers swimming lessons at a cost, but not all kids can afford to go to it during the summer to have swimming lessons. But this 21st Century program is going to pay for the students to go to that facility to get swimming lessons 1 day a week. That would qualify them for priority 4. Okay. And then finally, okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to get to that next, I promise. Okay, I'm almost done with this part. So priority 5 is increasing geographic equity. This would be for programs that do not currently have a 21st Century program, they get 5 points. If we see that someone claims that they don't have a 21st Century program, but they do, we will let you guys know that you should not be giving them that 5 points priority. They do have to mark in their application that they are applying for each of these priority points. Do not give them priority points if they didn't ask for them. Even if you see evidence throughout their application that they qualify, if they didn't ask, if they didn't check that they want that priority point, don't give it to them unless they've asked for it. Okay, I am going to speed up. Okay, so really quickly, as a peer reviewer, that's all about the grant itself, but there's just a few things that I'm going to discuss with you. I got 20 minutes. Okay, so as a peer reviewer, we do expect you to not discuss grant applications, your comments or scores with anyone else before, during, or after the peer review. Make sure that you keep the process confidential. Please understand that abuse of confidentiality and conflict of interest undermines the entire review process, and we don't want that to happen. You're expected to draw upon your expertise in evaluating the applications. Evaluate applications based on an assessment of the extent to which each application meets the requirements of the grant. Make objective assessment of applications. Always be mindful that your scores and your comments will determine which applicants will be recommended for funding. Okay. We ask that you have a clear understanding of the RFA and scoring steps. We ask that you read all applications in their entirety, that you follow all instructions provided, and that you review and consider only the information in the applications. We ask that you select a numerical score for each criteria based on that provided rubric, and that you adequately address the strengths and weaknesses for each criterion and provide comments that justify the score that you awarded, are consistent with each criterion's rating, and are written in complete, grammatically correct sentences. So a lot of times if an applicant does not get the grant, they want to see your comments. And so please make sure that those comments are professional, that they apply to the school that you're actually reviewing. We had that happen once last year where the wrong school was mentioned in the reviewers' comments, which caused quite a bit of issues. And so please make sure that you're commenting for the correct school. And of course, we want you to treat all applications fairly and equitably. Your numerical scores should be consistent with your written comments for each response. They should be checked for accuracy to ensure that the appropriate point scale was applied. Comments should praise strong areas as well as critique weak areas. So comments are really helpful when they provide specific feedback on why something was either strong or weak, rather than just simply describing or reiterating what the applicant stated. So please don't just put don't put things like all of the requirements were met. We want you to give more specific feedback in those comments. All right, I'm gonna skip that. I'm trying to hurry. Okay, so characteristics of high quality comments. They're objective, neutral, unbiased. They specify which elements of a given criterion the applicant met or did not meet. Please make sure that your comments are factual and that your professional judgment is clear. They are analytical rather than descriptive. So they state actual specific examples from the application of what was either wrong or correct instead of just being an opinion. That they are written in complete sentences. That they're limited to the information provided in the application and do not imply any information that was not included in that question. And that they are courteous, professional, understandable. Okay. Low quality comments characteristics. They provide too little documentation, such as writing just yes or good. They just repeat the criteria response rather than providing an analytical assessment. They're not actually related to the criteria that you're assessing. They're inconsistent with the assigned scores or recommendations. They're inaccurate based on information provided. They're misspelled or have grammatical errors. Or they contain judgments outside of the scope of the responsibility of the peer reviewer. Okay. Don't put comments in like, I don't think this would be a good program, or I think this would be an excellent program. That's beyond, you just need to focus on answering what was good and what was bad about that specific criterion that you're scoring at that time. Okay, so this is just an example of an acceptable comment under strengths. The applicant provided an overview of the proposed program, which included a brief but thorough description of the needs, data sources used to perform the needs assessment, the number of students affected by the needs, and the method used to gather data to determine the needs of students in the community. This is when you're scoring the needs assessment. Unacceptable comment would be some of the requested information was missing. Didn't say what information was missing. You didn't get specific. You just said some of the information was missing. That's an unacceptable comment. Okay. All right. Let's talk about EGAP really quickly. So you're going to go to the alabamaegrantsmanagement.com to get to EGAP. This afternoon, I will be putting you guys into the EGAP system if you're not already in there. If you are in there, you should be able to log in. If you're not sure what your password is, you should be able to go and hit log in with your email address and click on forgot your password. I will use the passwords that you guys have given us to put you into the system. If you're new, then it should send you an email telling you that you've been added to the system. And then when you go to sign in, you'll just click on forgot your password and you'll create a new password for yourself. Over on the far left of the screen, once you're logged in, you'll see something similar to this box where you'll see reader review. You'll click there. Then you'll click the fiscal year. You see down here, this is an old example. It says 2024, but you're going to change the fiscal year to 2027. Okay, so that's when this grant will begin, is in 2027. Only the applications that have been assigned to you will show up. I will probably be assigning applications. I think our timeline says that I will do that by the 1st. It may be that I get them to you earlier than that. I'll try to have Melissa send out an email once all of the applications have been assigned. It may be that I have to move some applications around. So wait until you've gotten the go-ahead that the applications that have been assigned to you are accurate. We try to make sure that everybody has an equal number of applications, but sometimes the system doesn't apply them that way. So they may give like one person 10 applications to score while they gave somebody else only 5. So we try to make it even. So so give it, you know, once we've started assigning the applications, give us a little bit of time to kind of move things around and make sure that everybody has an equal number of applications to score. And then again, I'll have Melissa send out an email saying you should be good to go. You can start looking at your applications now. But it'll list all the applications that have been assigned to you. Okay. If you're from Alabama and you have any kind of conflict of interest with one of the applications that have been assigned to you, so if you have any kind of ties whatsoever to an LEA that this application is pertaining to, then you should let us know that you do have a conflict of interest with that LEA. You should not be scoring any applications that are going to be serving a school system that you have any ties to at all whatsoever, whether you work for them now, that you have worked for them, you live there, whatever the case may be. You need to make sure you submit a conflict of interest, and we will trade you out with somebody else. We'll still make sure you get some applications to sign to review, but it doesn't need to be any that you have any ties to that could create a conflict of interest. So when you go to the reader review and you go to the application, there's a place here where it says add conflict of interest. You'll click on that button and then it will ask you what organization you have a conflict with, and you need to pick the organizations that you have conflicts of interest with. Okay. If you do that in advance, then before we actually assign the applications, it'll just prevent those applications from being sent to you. So if you want to go ahead and if you know that you have some conflict of interest now, as soon as you have an application, as soon as you have an account in eGap that's been provided to you, which should be by the end of the day today, then you could go ahead and mark which organizations you may have a conflict of interest with, so that right from the get-go, you won't be assigned those applications by the system. All right. So once the assignments have been made, you can still do the conflict of interest once you see your particular systems. So for example, there's one here that's been done for Elkmont Elementary in Limestone County. And it says underneath here, as the reader of this application, if you feel you have a conflict of interest with Limestone County, you can click here. So this is if you didn't get a chance to do your conflict of interest before the applications were assigned to you. And if you get one assigned to you where you do have a conflict of interest, you can still report it here, and it will reassign that application to someone else. And if you let us know, that we can try to move some things around to make sure that you get other applications to review instead. Okay. It is recommended that you download or print or save the applications you've been assigned to review, along with any related documents that you've been asked to review. And so you can do that by clicking where it says application download. It does create a print request. It will create a PDF file for you that can be printed or saved to your own computer. You can also print out the related documents. Again, the only ones that are going to pertain that you have to actually review are documents 8, 9, and 10. And then at the bottom, it does track your progress, which we will be keeping an eye on, of how far you've gotten through the rubric and tracking your progress. So when you do that print request, if you click application download, it just tells you if the print job is created within 30 seconds, it will display as a PDF file. If it takes longer, you will receive an email in your inbox when it's finished, and the PDF file will be placed in a section at the top of the ALSTE resources page. So if it takes longer than 30 seconds for that application to print or to be created for you, it'll put the application, the print job, in your inbox. Okay, click print on the print request screen. It'll show you that it's generating the document. Okay, so that's all about printing it. Again, you'll receive an email when the print job is finished. And then you can check at the top of the ALSDE resources, which would be again on that left side of the page for your finished print request. Even if you didn't get the email, it'll show your print request there, and they'll remain there for printing for 5 days. Okay. The links within the document, you can click on them and it will allow you to open the different related documents. Sometimes they'll be in Word, sometimes Excel, sometimes Adobe Acrobat. It just depends on how it was saved by the school system. But again, these documents can be saved or printed from the application. When you're scoring your rubric, it will keep up with your overall score. Competitive priority points are only applied if the application meets the minimum score of 175 out of 260. So in other words, if they don't at least make a 175, then the priority points aren't even applied, and their application won't be considered for funding. Sorry, I'm trying to go really fast. Again, you're able to actually type in a physical score and you leave in your comments as you go through the scoring rubric in eGap. And I tell you what, I'm going to skip past this and come back to it because as some people said they had to leave right at 12 o'clock. So I do want to talk about how you going to get paid really quickly. And then I'll come back to the application itself for those of you who can stay over just a little bit. You will be compensated $150 per application scored, and then $75 for today's training. And then it's possible we may ask you to come back and participate in a facilitated review discussion. So we have each application that's scored by 3 people, and if one person's scores are like way off compared to everybody else's, then we may actually ask you to come back and have a meeting with the other 2 scorers to talk about it and see what the actual scores should be. If we see there's a huge discrepancy in the scores between the 3 reviewers. If we do ask you to come back for that, we'll do it at a time that's available to you, and of course you'll get paid $75 to cover that time. Right now, we are not certain exactly how, this sounds horrible for me to say, it's not exactly sure how we're going to pay you guys at this moment. We are going to pay you, I promise. However, we typically pay our peer reviewers through a university. We always have a partnership with a university, but we actually dissolved our partnership with our last university and have been trying to get our new partnership in place since October. Here at the ALSDE, everything takes way longer than it should. It's taken us a long time to get the MOU with our new partners signed by all of the powers that be here at the State Department. So we're hoping that partnership will be in place like by the end of this week or maybe next week. If it's not, however, we're going to have to pay you guys directly from the ALSDE. So if that is the case, then you will have to be a vendor through our state e-procurement system, which is called Alabama Buys. Melissa sent this information out to you guys a couple of weeks ago when she invited you to be a peer reviewer. I would highly suggest you go ahead and start the process of becoming a vendor in Alabama Buys in case we do pay you through the system, which is, is a good possibility just because things just are taking so long for us to get the process done with USA. That's who our partnership is with, is University of South Alabama, but they can't help us out until that contract is finally signed. So if that contract is officially signed in like the next week or maybe by the end of next week, then we may be providing you guys with more information of how to get signed up as a vendor through USA so that they can pay you, because the process is usually typically easier through the university than us paying you from the State Department. But I would still suggest you go ahead and get registered in Alabama Buys to make sure that we can pay you from the State Department if we don't have that partnership in place by the end of this week or next. I'm sorry that it's kind of an up in the air thing. It's just We expected the partnership to be in place months ago, and it just seems like every time it goes through, somebody finds something else they want changed or fixed or whatever, and we just can't seem to get it done. So be prepared to go through Alabama Buys. It can be a long, drawn-out process, so please don't procrastinate on this. My biggest advice to you with Alabama Buys is just to make sure that you're accurate and consistent when you're entering in your information. So, for example, if you have both a PO box and a physical mailing address, make sure that if you put one or the other, that you use it on every document you submit to Alabama Buys. So if you put your physical address, always use your physical address. Because when it comes down to it, when you later provide us with those invoices that you have to submit to Alabama Buys, if you have a different address than what you use to create your account, it will red flag it and it won't pay you. You'll have to go through a bunch of steps to fix it. So be consistent. If you use your first name, middle initial, last name on all of your documents, make sure that you use that to sign everything. You use that across the board consistently, because it's small things like that that actually cause issues with people getting their vendor ID number. And then when it comes time to claim or to get their payments, not being consistent there can cause problems with the payment. So it has to be consistent. So just make sure that you're consistent with what you put into the system. And so once all of your applications have been scored, the deadline for scoring is May 1st. Then we'll ask you to submit an invoice for payment. And again, if you're being paid through Alabama Buys, we'll need your Alabama Buys vendor number and your unique entity identifier number to process the invoice. You get that through the government, the federal government. I think Melissa also sent instructions on how to do that as well. And then if we are not using Alabama Buys to pay you, then we will get back with you and send further instructions, whether it'll be through an email or we'll record a little video like this to help walk you through what that looks like. But we will let you know for sure by the third week in April how this process is exactly going to take place. Follow-up emails will be sent by Melissa. Okay. So I do want to go over these final timeline reminders. So April 1st is when we will have your qualifying applications assigned to you. So that is a Wednesday. Give us today and tomorrow to move things around as needed, but hopefully by Wednesday we will have your applications assigned to you. We will have another meeting on April the 6th. 2 of them. They're going to be the exact same meeting both times, but we just wanted to make it at 2 different times so that we would hopefully you'd be able to come if you have any questions. It isn't just an office hours meeting. It's just for you to come and ask questions about the application if you have any. Those will run from 9 to 10 a.m. and 3 to 4 p.m. at this same WebEx address. Again, it's not mandatory. It's just something you can. If you have questions about the how to score the applications, we can walk you through it during those meetings. And then your application reviews must be completed by May 1st of 2026. Okay. We will be keeping an eye on that process, and we'll be following your progress. Please understand that if we see that it looks like you're not going to finish your application review, we may be reaching out to you. And if we don't hear back from you or whatever, we may take any applications that you have not completed or even started on and assign them to other readers, because we have to have it done by May 1st. So please make sure that you are not procrastinating, that you're getting these done as quickly as you can. Otherwise, if it's getting close to the deadline and we see that you still have a lot of applications that you haven't even started on yet, we will try to reach out to you first. But if we have to, in order for them to all be done on May 1st, we may have to reassign some of your applications to other readers who have completed their job in a timely manner. So we try not to do that unless we have to, but we have to have them done by May 1st so that we can notify programs that they've gotten, whether they've gotten a grant or not, as early in May as possible, so they can start planning as quickly, before the end of the school year. And that's why we have a very strict timeline that we have to stick to. Okay, So if you have to leave us now, go ahead, but I am going to go back to the EGAP application. I see a couple of questions that have popped up. Just to confirm, if we already have an EGAP profile established, there's nothing further we need to complete in the EGAP system beforehand. That should be correct, yes. If you're already in the system, it should just let me assign you as a peer reviewer, and you won't receive any emails or anything. But if it doesn't have you in the system, then you will get an email saying you've been added to EGAP, and here's your login. And then when you go to log in, you'll need to click on Forgot My Password, which will enable you to create a password for your account. But if you did that last year, then you should already be in there. We just have to pull you from the system and put you in to be a peer reviewer for this particular application. So I think a lot of you will be in that boat, because I think we reached out to all of our people from last year first before we reached out to others to see who wanted to be a peer reviewer. So a lot of you are repeat reviewers from last year, which is great. Okay, I'm sorry. I've talked too much, but I am going to go back and finish going over the EGAP portion of the application, and then I'll answer any other questions that you may have. There was just a few more slides. Okay, so great question. Number of applications you will receive. So we say 6 to 10, but it's going to depend on how many are disqualified from the get-go. Unfortunately, so what we tell the applicants is that their application will be disqualified if they did not complete any of the required documents that they've uploaded. And there have been quite a few that so far technically are disqualified. But we are still going through them right now. I hope to finish that up today. And so they'll be divided equally among the peer reviewers that we have. So I still think it's probably going to be around the 6 to 10 per reviewer, hopefully. But until we figure out who is disqualified, and then how many we're actually going to push out, and then how many people attended today's training, all that depends, all that, affects how many applications you'll actually get to score. Also, I do highly recommend that you don't wait to score, because if you do a great job and you score yours earlier, and we do have to reassign some applications to other reviewers, we tend to reach out to the ones that have already done theirs and already completed theirs ahead of time. So if you want to make more money, get them done early so that we can use you for some additional applications if we need to. Last year we had to reassign several applications to people. So that would be great. Yeah, if you have to leave, totally understandable. I just want to go over these last few slides. Okay, so I think I've already gone over that. Just remember to keep referring back to that rubric as you're picking your scores for these, so that everybody's kind of scoring them equally. And make sure that you put in your comments. That it requires you to put a comment, but please put in quality comments. And we do want to make you aware that when you're in the EGAP application, it will time you out after 60 minutes of inactivity, but it will save your work. So just be aware that if you're in the system, but you haven't typed anything into it, within an hour, it will time you out and you'll have to log back in. Okay. You can click the save button each time to save your work. Again, it will show you can click on assignment overview to return to the overview page, which will show your completion percentage. It'll show how much of the application review you've actually done. And it must be at 100% for you to do a final submittal. Once you are at 100% complete, then you can click on submit review, and then that review is completed. So it does make you go through all of the parts before you can hit submit review. Okay. It'll give you a warning. You're about to submit this application review. Once submitted, you'll not be able to make any additional changes. You hit confirm, and then it will show us that your application the rubric has been 100% completed and it has been submitted. It'll also show it in your list of applications that have been sent to you. It'll show that it's complete and submitted there. I've already gone. Oh, here's where I went over the SMART the SMART goals. Please make sure that when you're going through, I'm not going to go through these things. I think I've already mentioned all of them now. All right. Any questions? Any other questions from the reviewers? See, a lot of people have had to leave. That's fine. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. So just to say, next steps, highly recommend that you go ahead and become a vendor in Alabama Buys if you're not one already. Just because you've been a peer reviewer in the past doesn't mean that you're a vendor in Alabama Buys, because in the past we've always used the university to pay our peer reviewers. So you need to check to make sure that you are a vendor. Melissa sent out instructions in her email a couple of weeks ago with how to do that. But if you have any questions about it, please don't hesitate to reach out and we'll help you with the process. We have another meeting next Monday at 9 and then again at 3 for you to ask any questions about the applications. And then all reviews have to be completed by May 1st. That is the absolute deadline for all reviews to be completed. All right. Thank you again so much for your help with this process. If you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to reach out to us. And that is it for today. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording. All right. Thank you guys so much.